Here we are with the 100th episode of the Gray Area podcast. This is going to be an incredible episode, and it's one that I'm super excited for. I'm generally not someone in life that tries to put the spotlight on myself. I try to put the spotlight on people around me. I try to always find amazing stories, find amazing people, and I try to prop those things up. But after my 100th guest had to reschedule due to his wedding, shout out to Michael Chiesa. Congratulations, man, on getting married. And he wasn't able to come into the podcast studio. I started looking for options. I started saying, what do I do to make a memorable 100th episode of the Gray Area podcast? And it was actually from my friends. My friend said, dude, why don't you get in the chair, find somebody to interview you, and let's capture your story. And I said, you know what? A lot of the OGs know the story of SFS, but a lot of the modern people do not. That's a great idea. So I wanted to bring none other than my brother, Chris Klebba, into the studio. I'm a man that I've learned a lot from, mentor, gentleman that's in the martial arts world. He's kind of seen our rise from almost the beginning. I mean, you've been around since the Total Fitness Center, which was 9 years ago. So you've seen this journey over 9 years. So here's how we're going to start this podcast, man. I'm going to quickly shout out VetLife, our sponsor, and then I'm just going to turn the floor over to you where you're the host. Any questions you ask, I'll just try to answer to the fullest, and, we'll just enjoy the open dialogue together. And this one I might cut and clip and put together, or we might be able to freely just let the whole thing ride. But it's a different direction than my regular podcast, so I like that it's just going to be free-flowing. So right before we get into it, I want to shout out VetLife. VetLife is a 501c3 nonprofit company. It's a company of veterans for veterans. Every veteran faces difficulties when they transition from active duty back to civilian life, and VetLife is there to ease that transition. If you want to reach out to VetLife, you can do so through Instagram or Facebook, or check out their website at vetlifetoday.org. So let's get right into it, Chris. You are the host. I'm going to shut up for the first time ever, let you talk, and then, we'll just see where this thing goes. And I gave you a pen and paper if you want to make any notes. I got one as well, and here we go.
Beautiful, brother. Man. I'm honored to be here, man, and what a journey it's been. And, man, the reason James is one of my favorite people is we love to reflect. And, that's something people always admired in me is I learned it from my dad. I love to stop and look back at the journey with people you love to do it with that have been there intentional with you for that long. It just makes it so much more special to have those people that literally remember where you were and you don't have to explain it and you were there and you felt the energy. So I'm so excited to get back into some of these memories and some things beyond that, man. So I cannot wait. So, this question I'm hearing pop up a lot, and it's a powerful one, man. So to get right into it, do you have an earliest childhood memory?
Ooh, earliest childhood memory. Give me a second on this one.
Yes.
Because I have a couple that stand out to me.
I know it's hard to construct the timeline in your head a bit. But
yeah, of like which came first.
Yep.
I can tell you what, believe it or not, I think the earliest childhood memory I have is a very bad one. But I'm going to explain it to you because it kind of shattered my worldview, and it shattered what I thought was real at a really young age, which in a weird way I think kind of shaped me to be the type of person that's able to question things, that's able to kind of make my own roadmap or kind of, I don't know, something happened to me at this period of time, and it changed me. It made me very different than most people.
Yep.
So I'm going to tell you the whole story really fast. I have two cousins that were extremely near and dear to me growing up. One is Megan, one is Shane. And we were sitting down playing a Nintendo video game. You remember like the A-B button and
of
the
course.
analog?
Yep.
Yeah. So we were playing Nintendo. We were playing Mario. I mean, the OG game, right? We were sitting down playing Mario together. And so I was sitting in the middle. My cousin Megan was on my left, and my cousin Shane was on my right. And now I was always really good at mathematics as a child. So we started playing, and Shane went, and then obviously I would go, and then Megan would go. And then Megan said, that's not fair, because then next thing you know, the way she wanted it done was it would go back to the middle person, the other person. So she goes, that's not fair. I want to sit in the middle. And the story's not going to make sense until it does. And I go, yeah, we can't do it that way. So we had just sat down to play. I said, we're going to have to go, the person on the right goes, then the middle, then the person on the left, and then the person on the left will go again, and then the middle, and then the right, and then the person on the right will go again, right? And that actually evens out the numbers, right? But to a child that doesn't comprehend mathematics, she's thinking like, that's not fair. Why do the people on the ends get to go twice and the person in the middle goes once. But she's not figuring out that, like, yeah, the left goes twice, but then the middle goes, the right goes twice, then the middle goes again. So it's 2, and it just evens itself out, right? And it's funny that this is such a pivotal moment in my life, but this story's going to come together. So so she says, fine, I want to sit in the, I want to sit in the middle. So we started doing that way. We get into an argument again where she goes, it's not fair. You shouldn't be able to go twice in a row. And I tried to explain to her, like, no, you're in the middle. So you get to go after me and you get to go after Shane. You're the one that wanted the, we're getting the same amount of turns. And she got really angry as a child, and we got into an argument, and we're probably 6. I mean, we're young. And she stands up and she goes, you're stupid. And I remember going, no, like, I'm smart. I'm the one that can figure out an even amount of turns, and you can't. And she goes, well, you don't even know that your mom killed herself. And this memory was so profound to me because as a child, my parents and everybody who were probably just trying to look out for me, they always told me that my mom had gotten sick and passed away. That was the story I was given by my aunts, uncles, father, like everybody just told me your mom got sick and then she passed away. And when I was probably about, like maybe 6, no more than 7 years old, my cousin, who I loved very much, we were very close. You'll find a million pictures of me and Megan all growing up, looks me in the face as a child and goes, you don't even know your mom killed herself. And I remember it was like snapping out of a movie. Imagine like your entire life you lived believing in one story, right? Like you had a clear story in your mind. Yeah, I don't have a mom, but she had gotten sick. And as a little kid, you rationalize that. You're like, people get sick, people can die. That happened to my mom. So she had told me, your mom killed herself. And I remember it was like a very world-shattering thing because I'm like, no, like, you're a liar. Like, why would you say that? And I remember I went home to my dad and I was just so angry at Megan. Like, why in the world would she say that? And I went up to my dad and I was like, hey, Megan told me this. And then I remember my dad being like, that is what happened. And then he told me the truth. And like, it was just devastating, Chris. It was like it's one of the first things that I vividly remember being young because everything that I believed in was wrong, was not accurate. I was living in a false story. And I wanted to protect that story. Like when Megan told me that, I just kind of wanted to write it off. Like I got really angry. I just wanted to get out of that. But then I found out from my father that no, that is what happened. So it shaped me very differently as a young kid. I started kind of questioning a lot of things and needing to be able to verify what I know to be true. Like I stopped just taking information or advice from people just because like maybe they're a teacher or maybe they're further ahead of me in this thing or they have a certain title in society or they're older. Like their words lost value to me. I would still listen to them, but unless I could verify it to be accurate, it didn't mean much. You know what I mean? And like especially news or things on television, like it just kind of lost its control because I was like, man, like I can't trust anything. So that was an extremely defining moment for me as a child. And I think it was also a really important thing that allowed me to later in life be someone that can navigate really like wishy-washy situations. And I don't know if it's a trauma response, but I'm extremely good at like removing all emotions from things that I have to make a very logical decision on. And a lot of it, in my opinion, relates back to that first memory.
Wow. I think it probably takes something that impactful to make that happen at such a young age, because I know as someone who's just turned 30, I'm just now experiencing things like marriage and death and parents and teachers that that are teaching kids and just now starting to have some of these things challenged. So to go through it at that young age and as someone who knows you, it explains so much of why you are the way you are and why you need what you need when it comes to so many things, man. And that's so powerful.
In a weird way, I think it's why I ended up loving like mathematics and I ended up loving logic and reason and things.
Because there's your shelter in some ways from that, I imagine, man.
They could provably be real to me. Like if I knew how to solve an algorithm or I knew how an equation works, I could stand on the side of like, I can prove to you that this is right, that this is real. Yeah. And that's a weird thing for a child to be saying, but like, if I looked at it from a psychological standpoint, it was my like ability to prove that something was real or right. And I started to not really care at all about emotional things. I didn't really care about the way things felt. I didn't really care about the ways things appeared to be. All I started caring about, like, is this true? And this is a perfect lead in. This is going to tie into our story so amazingly because, like, even on the foundation of SFS, which I don't want to skip forward to, is like I wanted our colors to be black and white. I didn't
Yeah.
I didn't want shades of
Yep.
gray. I wanted what works. I didn't care about fanciness. I cared about how do we create the most efficient, provably real. Like, it kind of all ties together. And,
yes.
and I don't even think I made that connection until just sitting here at this
Yeah.
table. But let's continue.
Yeah. So I do have a question. You know, and it sounds like in that circumstance, you know, some people, you kind of threw yourself into the logic side of it, the truth side of it. But I'm not hearing so much that you maybe stopped trusting people. So did you lose some trust for people, or did you keep that, or how did that affect your relationship with people?
Shockingly, I still had the exact same love and like care for the people in my life, like Megan. Like, even
Right.
after
I
that
feel
happened,
it, man. So that's incredible that you just didn't go that way with it. You know, you just kind of threw yourself into the data of it, you know?
because I think when I looked back at it, I loved her leading up to that and after, but it was like she wasn't lying to me about the world. If anything, my cousin Megan, although during a fit of emotion, told me the truth of the world.
Mm-hmm.
She almost did me a justice.
Yep.
I was growing up in an illusion. I was growing up in a false reality of the world.
Yep.
My cousin Megan, although, like I said, during an anger fit, was like, boom, but she hit me with reality.
Yes.
And something about my brain, I love reality. I love things, knowing them the way they are. Like, most people love the narrative that their mind creates. Like if I'm married, that means all these other things, and that it doesn't really mean anything. It means the quality of your relationship. It means if the person loves you that's with you, they're going to stay with you, and if they don't, they're going to leave you. It doesn't matter if they're married to you or not. I love reality in things, and I do not care about the way that things feel or the way that you think they should be. I care about the way that they are. And as a young kid, after that moment, I still had the same love and appreciation for the people in my life, but I had an extreme disdain or a dislike of anything that wasn't real, that wasn't true. I like kind of went on a campaign of like, I'm going to find out any illusions that I'm living in, and I have to work to shatter those. And if I can shatter those, I'll be a healthier person.
Yes.
You know what? And maybe it's a protection thing. Maybe it's so my world can't get shattered again.
Right.
So I'm not this guy living and believing in a story that someone goes, guess what? See that bubble? Bop.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So and from that moment on in my life, I've been extremely drawn and driven to find the truth of everything.
Yes.
Which I'm sure you've witnessed over the last
Yes.
couple of
And
years.
as interestingly, so many parallels with jiu-jitsu in general, which I know was a massive love of yours that we'll get into, but that's the control of a fight. It's just the logic of fighting. It's beautiful, man. So
And you are chasing a truth. You're chasing how does a limb operate
right.
and how does it not?
Yep.
How is leverage applied and how is it defended?
Yep.
How are arteries closed and what can we do to keep them open? These are just, when I look at jiu-jitsu, I try to explain to people, to me, it's just a scientific approach towards anatomy.
That's right.
And understanding the body and how things are applied. That's all jiu-jitsu really is. It is a scientific process that if you can learn to look at it that way and then find the application on things like timing and feel and yada yada, that's all jiu-jitsu is.
Yes.
It's like a science. It's like, to me, it's mathematics. And if I can understand the nuances of why things work, then I can break it down really well for others. It's that same search for truth.
That's right. So do you have any early memories of your mom?
Not really, to be honest. I have like an extremely faint memory of sitting in a rocking chair with her, as silly as that is, at my grandparents' house in Langhorne. I remember this, like, there was just this extreme comfort feeling, you know, and but it's very fleeting. And is like, is that memory there because I saw a picture of it? Because that's about the only tangible memory that I can say that I have of my mother. My mother was more of my Aunt Diane. Like, when my mom passed away, her sister kind of stepped up and she provided that nurturing, loving mother side so strongly every time I was around her that, like, it kind of, you know, she became my mother figure. I really don't have much of my mom at all. And I only heard stories, you know, and to be honest, when I was young, I heard all the wonderful things about my mother. Like, apparently, like my Aunt Di had me tearing up last time she was out here because she was like, "You don't understand." It's funny because I thought I had no more emotion to my mother's story at all. Like I thought I'd kind of like close
Right.
that chapter. My Aunt Di actually kind of got me teared up last time she was here because she's like, I just want you to realize that like the way that you are, the way you're so passionate, the way you try to light flames in other people, the way that you're always trying to show people their potential and like hold a mirror for what life can be. She's like, that is who your mother was to the fullest. She's like, your mother went around trying to elevate the people around her in her life and trying. My Aunt I said, she's like, listen, literally, the reason I have the career that I have and the reason I've been successful the way I have, my Aunt I's like VP of a company she does extremely well. I think over 200 grand a year, manages a ton of international employees. She's done extremely well. She's like, your mother is the reason I was there. She like came up, got me when I was down at my lowest and was like, get up. Like we are going into school. You're going to apply. You're going to do. So I don't know why it hit me so hard because it was just kind of like, I've always had this spirit from when I was little to like make the world a better place. And I have no idea why. Like I can't really pinpoint why do I have this overwhelming drive to try to make people's lives around me better?
Yeah.
But I do. And for her to say like, man, that was the spirit that your mom brought was like really powerful thing. And when I was young, I only heard the good things. And then as I got a lot older, I heard all the struggles my mother had. My mother was a diagnosed schizophrenic. She had a bunch of other things. She was one of the first people that was like kind of taking Xanax and those other things, trying to treat it, which they found later on that it can increase suicidal behavior. It can mess with brain chemistry so much. Maybe there was different healing methods that if my mother had gone through, maybe she would be alive to this day. But, you know, especially like psych ward treatment and stuff of people back in the day was kind of horrific.
Right.
You know, so she kind of experienced all that until she had enough.
Yeah. So now stepping into fatherhood yourself and looking at that time, how did that affect your relationship with your dad from that point? Or looking back, is there something you want to just talk to how you've come to look at it now or how you looked at it then or just the
so
how that was between you and your dad? Yeah.
They're polar opposites. Like when I was little and I finally, let's say not really little, but as you get to like the teenage years and you can evaluate things a little bit more intellectually, I actually really had a lot of resentment for my father and a lot of hatred for my father that he did. I think he was probably unaware of. Like he'll be watching this episode and be like, what? But I carried so much resentment and anger towards him because my dad growing up was my superhero, dude. Like I looked at the way that you look at your father is the exact same way I looked at my father. Like to me, he was like a superhero. Like he would help other people. He had a lot of great qualities that I could see. My brain kind of wrote off the bad qualities. He had a little bit of a temper. I watched him beat some people up, and but I looked at him as like a hero figure, right? So like every young boy that has that, like you want to grow up to be your father. Well, then as a young kid that can't understand like relationship trouble and things like that, knowing that my father had cheated on my mother with my stepmom now. And then it kind of put my mom, who was already probably on edge, into a spiral down even further. As a young kid, that turns into anger, resentment, like, why did you do this, yada, yada, yada. And it kind of led me down a little bit of a dark path because, okay, so I had illusions shattered as a young child. Then I get into, I really admire my dad, and I see an example of what I want to be like. And it's like that's kind of like an easy road to identity, right? Like if you identify with someone or you see somebody that you're like, man, like, I value that. Like, I'm going to be that. It kind of gives you an easy path to growing up.
Right.
And then you go through that period where that image was shattered. Same as my other story. That image of him was shattered, which, you know, I guess I'll finish this, but that image was shattered and I started being like, I don't want to be like my father. And I put unnecessary blame on him and I put unnecessary emotions onto him. And, it really put me in a kind of a dark place because now my worldview is kind of shattered again. I don't have someone that I'm really trying to emulate myself after, and I'm kind of just like in the struggle. But now way later looking back, like, man, you know how many young relationships are extremely difficult? Like my dad was in his early 20s. My mom was in her early 20s. They had a son together probably before either of them have figured out the world at all. They're both struggling. My mom had mental health issues. My dad's trying to work like crazy to like provide for his family. that is an incredibly difficult, complex situation that I didn't understand 1% of what was going on in their lives. And as an older man now that has had relationships that have failed that I wanted to work, and that just has such a more clear perspective, I look back and I have so much forgiveness for my dad. And it's like, could things have been different? Maybe, but like a lot of the times you don't realize like broken people make decisions that aren't for the best, but like they're both trying to be on the come up. My dad's trying to figure out his life. My mom's trying to figure out his life. They got a little baby together. Like I couldn't imagine having kids when I was in my early 20s.
Yeah.
Like imagine if you were in your early 20s and you had a child that you had to throw in the mix. But that's like the norm of our society.
Yeah.
Before you figured yourself out, before you figured life out, before you are financially stable and emotionally more stable, now you throw a baby into the mix. So as I got older, I thank God, a lot of the resentment and anger and everything towards my father has faded. And it's like, I look at it with a lens of forgiveness. I look at it with a lens of, man, he was young. He's trying to figure out the world. He had no idea the repercussions that would take place from that period of time. He didn't know that my mother would commit suicide and his son would have all these extra struggles. Like he didn't know any of these things, So it's wild how that shifts. And I think it's a really good insight for people that like, your perspective now may be vastly different later. So you got to make sure that like, thank God I didn't really act out upon those things and like actively destroy the relationship with my father and make sure that I put all the guilt possible onto him, which would have torn him to pieces. Because like regardless of what happened between him and my mom and everything, my dad did love me extremely much as a child. He was the best father that he could have possibly been with all the things that he was going through at his life. Like I remember my dad worked endlessly to make sure that like we had a decent home, we had a great Christmas, we felt loved. Like my dad did all those things. So for all the resentment that will want to take you off course, I remember, looking back now, I'm like, I was very fortunate.
Yeah. There's no question the one thing that'll make you stop judging forever is, if you live long enough, you'll either do everything you've judged someone for or see how you could rationalize everything you've ever judged. That's how I feel about everything. Man, that'll shake the judgment right out of you, man. You live long enough. So
100%.
It's so true.
And that lens of forgiveness makes you more human.
That's right.
Because it's like if you hold these people to this unreachable standard, you're going to be forever disappointed by everyone, including yourself.
Yep.
100%.
Wow, man. So then just moving on through your childhood, where did it go from there? Where do you want to take it from there, from that moment? How do you remember things progressing, and where did you kind of get stability after that, or what was next?
So I bounced around from schools so much. I think we moved like 5 or 6 times by the time I was like 12. Like, so I had absolutely no stability at all. And I was I was a very personable kid. Like I was probably a weird kid. Like every kid is a weird kid, but like I was really filled with life. Like I remember I always kind of radiated energy, so when I wanted to be a part of something, people I had a natural leadership quality about me that like, even when I was a loner, if I made a pack of people, I was like
just charismatic. Yep.
Yeah. I had a certain energy that just radiated, but I had bounced around schools so much that, especially after our initial couple moves, I kind of became a loner. I kind of became like, I don't need anybody. They're probably going to get taken out of my life again. I'm probably, you know what I mean? So I ended up having an extremely small circle. And I remember sports was like a really big thing to me. Like I was a huge football fan. I was a Dallas Cowboys fan because of my Uncle Martin. He was a good influence in my life. So sports, kind of took hold of me in the 90s, which I feel like they did to a lot of young men. Like a lot of young men wanted to grow up to be professional sports players, and so a big part of my identity is like I tried to play football, I played hockey, I tried to be really active. I played soccer constantly with my aunts and uncles, especially and Uncle Martin, but hockey was the thing that really kind of stuck for me. I ended up playing for, I don't know, like 7-8 years, and being a part of a team or, being good at something builds you a little bit. You know what I mean? And as a kid, I was like very naturally athletic.
Yes.
So I was able to be good at the sports that I would play or in any physical activity or things like that. Like looking back, I wish I would have wrestled. I wish I would have done a bunch of other things. But like I had natural athletic ability and I was always very intelligent. So even while being a loner and like not having a lot of friends growing up and like kind of bouncing all around. And like, I remember being really frustrated with that. I had still a strong sense of self-confidence, which I think was really pivotal, because a lot of kids in my same situations, like, if they didn't have the intelligence or they didn't have the athletic ability, like, man, it would have been a dark place.
Yeah.
But I always kind of knew I stood out mentally, and not really, honestly, to be, athletically, I didn't stand out that much. I was just athletic, but I wasn't like gifted. But I remember intelligently, I was very gifted. Like, I'll tell you a really funny story with that. So I think it was like, I don't know, first or second grade. Basically, the teacher at the front of the room would quickly show up a card with multiplication on it. It'd be like 9 times 7 is 63. And so what you did is you had to stand next to a person's, whoever was up would be standing next to the kids that are sitting down in the classroom. And as soon as the teacher showed the card, first one to say the answer moves to the next desk. So like if I get it wrong, I have to sit in their chair, and then they get up, and the goal is to kind of go through the room. They made me sit down because I literally had gone through the entire classroom beating everyone multiple times. I was just very, very quick-witted. I was very intelligent. I scored super high on my tests. I was like, a straight A student until life started beating me around a little bit, like that identity, a little bit of depression. But even during my worst student times, I would like ace tests. I'd get like 100% on the super difficult test that everybody struggled with, but I would do like 2% homework.
Yep.
So I think luckily for me, as a young man, I had being athletic. I did have loving people in my family, and I was very intelligent. So there was still enough of a core of self-confidence that kind of kept me trudging on. It wasn't until my late teens, which I'm sure we're going to get to, where I went into a like extremely dark depression that I almost took my own life. But the things that kind of helped move me forward were I did feel good about who I was. Despite losing my mother, because little kids are brutal without even meaning to be brutal. Like they find out your mom died as a kid. Your mom died? What happened? Where's your mom? Blah, blah, blah. And it's just like, as a kid, you can't really handle those conversations well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of emotion behind it. Other little kids they have no filter. They don't understand what they're saying.
Right.
You know what I mean? So there was definitely some balance, but.
Yeah. Were there any more just moments or people from that moment around 5, 6 years to 10, 11, 12, any more moments or people of impact that you remember having a strong push on you?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely my Aunt Diane. She's the person I got to shout out the most, because like she poured so much love and so much nurturing into me as a young child, and so many quotes and stuff that I used to make fun of her for. But like when I would go to, so I would be with my parents during the week, and I would go to my aunt's house from like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, every weekend I possibly could. And my aunt was so engaged with me. It was crazy. She would sit down and write out, like math formulas on a piece of paper and quiz me on them. And if I got them all right, she'd give me some money to walk to the quarter store to buy myself like a snack or something. And like, and she would always just like life lessons. My Uncle Martin and me would be out back playing football like every day. Like every day I was over there, at some point in the day, we're going outside to play. Like they were so active with me. They weren't disengaged, role models. They were like involved in my life, which it's being grown up now. Like I try to give my best energy I can to young kids, but it takes a lot. You have to put what you want to do on the back burner to give the kid the experience that they're looking for.
Yes.
And my aunt and uncle really made sure to do that. And my aunt used to say a lot of things to me, like the one that stands out to me the most is she used to say, "It's all about the love." And she would say this statement over and over and over, and to the point where like me and my cousins made fun of her. We're like, "Sure, Aunt Di, it's all about the love." But she drilled into my brain over and over as a young child that like you need to find a life that you love. You need to find a work environment that you love. You need to find people that you love. You need to find a path that you love. Like life is all about love. And she used to push that over and over. And it somehow deeply got into my psychology, because whenever I was in a place for too long where it's like, I don't love this situation. I don't love these people. Not even these people. Like I don't love the treatment I'm seeing from this or that or the other thing. I knew I had to make a change. But that was almost imprinted on me by this mother figure constantly being like, life is all about love.
Right.
Like you're going to get one shot through this thing. And like mortality has always kind of been on my mind because of the loss of my mother.
Of course. Of course.
So it's like I regularly am like, am I doing something worth my existence in this life? Am I doing something worth my time? Do I love what I'm going to do next week? You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I think that the lack of content in like a regular job or anything, any situation that wasn't good for my spirit, those words, man, just ate away at my mind until I made a change.
Yeah.
I had to get to a life where I could almost reflect back to Anti being like, it's all about the love. And I'm like, yes, it is, you know, but, you know, she was a massive influence. I had a best friend named Tyler Brim. I still remember to this day. And, you know, I was super young but it was like that real connection, man.
Yeah.
Where you had you had a best friend that
Right.
you guys would always spend time together. If it was lunch, we'd go out on the swings together. If it was after school, we'd ride bikes together. If it was like we constantly spent time together, and that made a massive impact on me. Having like a male friend like that was just like me, that we could, you know, like me but not like me. But it was another human being trying to enjoy this thing, you know.
Yep.
So there was those pivotal things that helped me move forward.
Yes, yes. Isn't it funny, you know, I've been thinking about that a lot too lately, that I've been seeing old advice pop up, and I'm like, you know, it's just different as you experience things, because people are saying it relative to their experience and you're processing it relative to your experience, but it's still good advice just relative to your experience. Sometimes it hits you so different, and it's some of these old quotes and these old school things I used to hate hearing, you know, even the usual things, I hate balance and this and that. It's like things really do start to come together as your perspective shifts and your experience changes. It's wild, man.
How many times have you read a book or listened to a motivational speech or something, and you pulled something from it, but then a year or 2 years later,
man.
you pull a completely new level of understanding that you're like, how was I blind to that before?
Yep.
That's an example
Yep,
of that.
yep.
It happens to me all the time.
Yeah. And I like to say that too. I was someone who just hated hearing things were about experience or time or patience, because I wanted to be able to outthink things and thought that I was smarter and could outwork people. So I should be able to, you know, experience things earlier or have perception of things differently earlier. But it is so true that certain things are just time and sitting with these questions, sitting with these, you know, things that you thought you had. It's fascinating, man, the way that it works.
And sometimes you need time to pass to clear emotions and damage out of your mind, because you're not looking at it clearly.
Yep.
You think you are.
Yep.
But there's so much emotion intertwined with your thoughts and your logic of the situation, and like all that emotion heavily clouds your judgment.
Right.
That's like when I was that young kid resenting my father versus looking back now and having a lot of forgiveness.
Right.
Only time can do that.
Right.
Like, so when I see someone go through like an extreme death in their family or something like that, we just had a young boy in here who lost his mother to cancer, and he's 17 years of age. And I'm like, dude, nothing can make it better.
Right.
You know, he's like, he was coming to me like, hey, I know your mom had passed away. And it's nothing. There's nothing that can be done.
Right.
There's no exercise you can do. There's no time is going to have to let the emotions play their course, and it's going to be painful. And all I told the kid was like, it is going to be a roller coaster. Some days you're going to feel okay, and then you're going to hit this death drop, and you're going to feel like you can't get out of bed. But you got to know that like that's just the journey, man. And like those are things where logical people like us, we want to be able to solve things now.
Right.
We want to be able to take action. We want to be able to execute a game plan and solve it. Sometimes you can't, man. And there's a little bit of letting go that has to happen to like allow life to do what it needs to do.
Yeah. And it's never linear, because those emotions are just like weather. They're going to come in and out, and it's those big impactful events that shift your perspective that you don't necessarily have control when something's going to happen to you, or you're going to lose a family member, have some impactful event that's going to shift your experience, you know, and all your perceptions on everything. It's wild, man.
100%.
But so last question on this, you know, when people think, you know, what made your childhood uniquely difficult, I think there's an obvious one for you, but is there something else you want to share, that something else about, you know, I know a lot of people mention anxiety, things along that nature. Is there anything else that, I know I can imagine a lot of things sprung from this impactful event, but anything else that made your childhood uniquely difficult that you look back on?
So when I look back, believe it or not, I didn't even know about anxiety. I didn't even know about like, like, you know how nowadays there's like an epidemic of everyone is struggling with their minds.
Right.
And I didn't have any of that. Like I knew I was in pain over a lot of situations, but like that pain was rational. Like it made sense to me. It wasn't like, why do I feel like this today? You know, and I feel like sometimes people, there's like trauma or damage or difficulty they're going through, and they're like kind of trying to hide from that reality. And they're like, why do I feel like hell today? Why can I barely get myself out of bed? You know why? you probably are just not acknowledging that, or you're not
Yeah.
accepting the pain that is going to come with the situation. So like I knew that those things were going to hurt, but regardless of all those things, I don't know why this is, but I did focus on what I still loved about my life. Like for all that I could have focused on that wasn't great, I did still have a good childhood. I still had a father that did love me very much. I had family members love me. I had close relationships with cousins. I had, a couple friends that I was really, tight with. And so when I think about like, did I have anxiety as a child or anything? I didn't, like, really at all. And maybe some of that comes from because I had to move so much and because I had to learn to be a loner. I didn't need anyone.
Yeah.
I've always had this weird sense of like once I got myself back together, I didn't need anyone else. I just wanted good people in my life. And it gets way worse after Michelle, which is a part of the story that is coming up. But before that, if you can find strength in yourself to kind of like get up each day and take on the challenges that are going to come, regardless of what's happened, that's the magic, man.
Yeah.
The magic is like you can handle whatever life throws at you. Mm-hmm. It's just you might have to go through an incredible amount of pain or discomfort, but it all moves you in a better direction if you allow it to. Like all those lessons can be turned to gold, but you have to have that outlook.
Yes.
Like I easily, like especially nowadays culture, I could have fallen into being a victim. I could have fallen into being, well, it's not fair. You don't understand. This happened to me. I need medication to avoid. No, like if I was incredibly upset or in pain or something, I knew why. I wasn't shocked by it. I was like, I'm incredibly upset because I can't have a conversation with my mother ever again. Like, so there was I was so in touch with reality that I think the more you are in touch with reality, yes, it might be painful. Yes, it might be difficult, but it makes sense. Is life supposed to be this effortless, no pain, float through, everything is joy experience? I don't think so. Life has ups and downs. And if you only want life to be an up, well, then the downs are going to devastate you way more because you're going to be avoiding that reality.
Right.
You're going to be trying to be like, oh, this shouldn't be like this. I should be able to. No. Are you the master of the universe? Are you able to pull the strings for everything that happens? You have to go where the ride takes you.
Yeah.
So I had a very good relationship with the truth, I think, reflecting all the way back to that time with my cousin.
Yeah.
Man, I wasn't really bothered by what would happen as long as I just knew what happened. Mm-hmm. As long as I knew that I could trust truth, that was a big thing for me.
I think the reason why I've always had this connection and admiration for you is not necessarily what you have, even though I love what you've built. It's who you are after what you've been through. But something cool is I think, you're one of those rare people that's kind of always felt these things. Just like I just feel these things so inherently. You feel it when you talk to me. I just believe these things so hard to be true. And that's the beauty of it. It's like you've somehow always felt these things, even though we've developed and honed our understanding and our skills around these. We've just always kind of had these certain drives in us, and we recognize it in each other in the way we speak about it. It just, it's no surprise you are where you are, but that you've maintained this level of character and are able to have endless energy to give to others is, the most impressive part to me, man. How have you been able to maintain that?
As weird as it is, so much of who I am goes with zero effort. Mm-hmm. I you might understand that, but I feel like a lot of guests won't understand that. I am who I am without having to try to be anything.
Right.
It's just the way I'm wired, the way I'm set up. Maybe my life experiences shaped me, but like even all the way back to being a young kid, I just knew who I was. Like there wasn't this battle between what do I know and not know. I feel like a lot of people are juggling to find out who they are and what they believe.
Right.
I wasn't like that. Like my beliefs were generally always grounded in something. Mm-hmm. And I didn't care if you were going to present a reality that was very painful to me. If it was true, I would actually be thankful for it. Because you're like fighting the illusion for me. Mm-hmm. And I never wanted to be in a state again where I was in illusions.
Right.
So when you can live like that, what are you afraid of? Maybe that's the ultimate statement I should have made. There is no fear because it just is what it is.
Right.
And all we can do is just live with what life is.
Right.
Period.
Yep. Wow, man. So
I'll talk about I have a perfect period before we get to how SFS came to be.
Perfect. Yeah, let's get into the teen years a bit.
Yeah, teen year,
Perfect.
exactly.
Perfect.
So I was like always incredibly shy with girls. I have no idea why. Like as a young kid, like around guys and everything, like I was totally myself, but somewhere around that like, 5th grade mark, I was like so shy around girls. And anyway, I remember my first crush. It was in 5th grade. I'm sure this girl would never hear this podcast, but her name was Stephanie Fitzpatrick. She was a background. What are the people in the background of movies called?
Extras.
Yeah, okay. She was an extra in the movie The Sixth Sense. If
Wow.
you go and watch the movie The Sixth Sense, there's the classroom scene where he kind of freaks out in the classroom, and this girl kind of like she's a little blonde girl, and she looks over and gives this like weird look at him as he's freaking out in the classroom. She had multiple classes in my school, and like I had such a crush on this girl, but like didn't even have the courage to be like, hi, like nothing. You know what I'm saying? So I was always like super shy as a child, which led to I don't think I had my first relationship. I think I was in 6th or 7th grade. Anyway, I'll tell a super short, funny story on how my first relationship came to be. So back in the day in biology, you used to dissect a frog. Did you ever dissect
Yeah, I
a
did.
frog?
I did.
Okay.
Yep.
You just said it. So I had a best friend at the time whose name was John Olkowski, who is now a engineer for Johnson & Johnson in the Swiss Alps and like mega successful. He was very intelligent. We had a bunch of AP classes together. So I was always in like advanced placement things and, et cetera. John decides right at the start of the class, the teacher had just laid the frogs in the bowl or in the little bin that we were going to come in. And he's like walking around the different classrooms. And there's 2 girls in front of me that I've never spoke to. Like I said, I had no real social skills at this point. And John instantly grabs the scalpel, slices the frog's head completely off, shoves it on the end of his pencil. This is in the middle of the class and starts going, this is Frog News reporting. We're going to go ahead and interview the people. He is just like the opposite of me at the time. He's very outgoing. So I'm like standing up and I'm laughing and we're like causing a scene. And he taps this girl on the shoulder in front of us. Her name is Michelle. And right as she turns around, he takes the frog on a pencil and he's like, Frog News! Like, and so this girl screams and like, you have a dissected frog in your face. She throws a kick. She kicks me in the nuts in the middle of this science class, drops me to the floor in front of I'm down, dude. Like, game over. John's laughing so hard.
First official takedown in the career. Yeah.
10-8 rounds. I didn't get back up. I'm like down. She's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, I meant to kick him. And I'm like, Anyway, that's my first relationship. Like, me and this girl ended up like talking because of that and how like, what a bizarre circumstance. Like, she turns around, she sees a frog in her face. She throws a kick. She kicks me instead of John. She became my first girlfriend. And to be honest, like, there was no initiation on my part at all. This girl basically was like, she started putting a lot of energy into me and, basically was like, you're going to be my boyfriend. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, I'm going to expedite the story a little bit, but her and I were together for multiple years. And
But real quick, did you find that at an early age, that kind of feminine energy already how was it to be around that after your mom and your aunt? Was it easy for you to go into that? Was it natural and easy, or
honestly, she just kind of took charge of the relationship, and I was like
just
very
kind of flowed
happy
natural and let it happen, and was easy? Didn't feel any resistance or anything either way. Just let it happen.
Almost no resistance. There was no like wanting to be in a different relationship. There was no like, I'm with Michelle, but there's this girl. Like,
right,
dude, I was like so happy and thankful for her and appreciative of her, and so we had dated multiple years, and like I went all in with this girl, like probably because I was a struggling kid who had bounced all around. I was a loner. I had never really that was my first real girlfriend influence. Yeah. So I like really fell in love with this person, and she was a struggling young kid too. She came from a split family, and the dad was kind of not in the picture at all, but her mother was extremely loving and very good to me as well. Mm-hmm. Like whenever I was around them, her mother's name is Karen. She was like extremely loving and good to me. But anyway, her and I kind of, because we were 2 struggling kids, we confided so much in each other. Like, all the struggles I had in life, all the things that I wanted to overcome, the man I wanted to be, like
Yep.
I kind of presented that in my fullest light to this woman, and
Yeah.
she kind of did that back for me. So we created an extremely strong bond.
So it's almost so easy to trust and throw yourself in because you needed someone to do this with. So it wasn't like you were resistant or afraid because of the instability. You were just so excited to have someone that you just connected to each other, eh?
100%, man. There was like, it was her and I versus the world is
Yeah.
what it felt like, because like the world had kind of smacked me around a little bit, and it had done the same for her.
Yeah.
And we had this attitude of like, we're going to take on this world together, and
Yeah.
we're going to win. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what that looks like in the end game, but like we're
Right.
going to make it. You know, it's like, and it's young love. And like,
Yeah.
you know, I hope that if, you know, Stacy listens to this interview or stuff, like it doesn't in any way take away my love from today, but like when you have that first young love and you've never really experienced that before,
Oh, yeah.
it's an incredibly impactful, powerful thing. And you know, we had some slight struggles, but very small. Like it was so natural. And so fast forward a little over 2 years into our relationship, or my timelines have to be off. It wasn't 5th grade. It would have been 8th grade because it was biology. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, 7th, 8th grade, I imagine.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it was like
something
7th,
in
8th
there.
grade.
Yep.
So
And you were probably about like 12, 13, 14.
I think I was 14 when we started dating. Yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Just turned 14. And so anyway, we were together for multiple years. And then my dad and stepmother started having a ton of problems. And, you know, they're fighting a lot, struggling over money, struggling over all kind of things. And like I said, like now the filter that I look through it now is so different. So it's hard for me to tell the story the same way I felt then. But my stepmom basically was like, hey, I'm moving back to Michigan. My family is in Michigan, and like you're coming with me or we're going to split up. And so, you know, obviously my dad comes to me and is like, hey, we're going to move to Michigan. And that, dude, you want to talk about I had never really been explosively angry before. Like I had been angry and hurt and stuff like that, but I've always had just a certain spirit that like, man, I'm a happy person by nature. I'm a very, like, I just want people to love each other. I want people to treat each other the right way. I want to be happy. I want other people to be happy. But like my father was, you know, like, hey, we're moving to Michigan. And I was like, you know, the fuck we are. Like
And you were in Pennsylvania at the time?
Yeah.
Yes.
All of my family, all of the now friends that I've finally built up, the first woman that I'm like dating and really all about.
Yeah.
We've been together for multiple years. And then he's like, you know, hey, I'm going to rip all this out of your life. And I remember like, so now all that resentment that I had finally started to kind of cool off about like from my childhood, because my dad doesn't know this, but when I was young, I had a lot of resentment. Like, why did you do that to my mom? Well,
You knew what? Do you mind me asking for context? Just when you found that out, or when you knew?
with what part for the
With
movie?
your dad and your stepmom?
Oh, I found that out really young.
Really?
Super young. Yeah.
So in a way, did that make the move worse? Like you're uprooting me for someone that you did this with already too, and so you already kind of resented the woman too. You're like, now we're moving our life for this woman that I already resent. So it must have just all aligned at once. And
You just literally perfectly
Yeah.
described. I mean, I can tell that I'm explaining the story well enough that you felt
yeah.
it, because I hated my stepmom growing up. I try not to talk about that a lot now, because now I feel very bad. I actually have a lot of sympathy for her. She came from a disastrous home life. She had no role models. She was a mess. She didn't really have much opportunity in her life. Kathy she's just had a lot of nothing, which has made her make a lot of bad choices, which, you know, but when I was young, I'll be honest, and it's good that I can speak like this now, but I hated her.
Yeah.
And when I say hate, there's no one in the world that existed that I had more disdain for than my stepmother. And I don't know how it didn't explode more in the household, but I just would avoid her.
Yeah.
I would just get away from her. I would not care about anything she said. I hated her to the fullest, because again, as a young kid that can't really frame things properly, I'm like, you are the reason that my mother took her own life. Like that is how a child looks at it.
Yeah.
And she didn't treat me very well, to be honest. Like she was she's a young woman. She's struggling. She's got her own mess to deal with. She has somebody else's child in her life. I'm not shocked. I'm not shocked that she did a bad job, but she definitely didn't make me feel like that she was happy that I was in her life or anything like that. So I had a lot of resentment for. So now you get to the point where my father's going to make me move to Michigan for literally the person I hate more than anyone in the world at this period of my life, and I'm going to lose my relationship. I'm going to not be able to see my family. I'm going to get away from the friend group that I finally built.
Yep.
It was explosive. And so this leads me to another incredibly defining moment, which I don't know if my father even remembers this, but I remember it vividly. I had come home and it was late at night and we were sitting down to talk, and he was basically telling me, hey, it's happening.
Yeah.
So he sat me down and basically said, we are moving to Michigan, da, da, da. And I blew up, and I'm sure I said a bunch of things that weren't right or whatever. And I said to him, you need to choose me or her. Like, you need to choose me or her, because, like, I'm not going, and you figure I'm a young kid. And I remember my father looked me dead in the eyes and said he would choose her over me. He looked me dead in the face. And, like, this memory is probably blocked out of his mind. And I remember breaking down, and then I think I screamed at him and ran up the stairs and went up to bed or something like that. But, like, that moment was like, because he still, despite any of the pain, despite any of the things, he was still a hero to me.
Yeah.
When he looked me in the face and said that he would choose her over me,
Yeah.
my brain was like, all right, you don't even need your father in your life.
Wow.
You don't need your father. You don't need anybody. So, long story short, they make me move to Michigan. At that point, I don't give a shit about anything, Chris. Like, I don't care about school. I don't care about, when I moved in here, I think I was in 9th grade. I didn't care about anything. School, nothing. It didn't matter. I would go there. I would literally sleep through almost all my classes, go home, grab a bite to eat, and just, like, sit in my room.
Yeah.
And gaming was a big escape for me. And maybe that's why I still game a lot to this day. It was my way to detach from all the shit that I had to deal with, and just, like, I could just focus on something that would keep my mind occupied, right? So about 6 months into being here, Michelle and I were trying to make a long-distance relationship work. And, it's extremely difficult. You romanticize the idea that you're going to, just give each other the best and you're going to be reunited. Like, one of the most painful memories in my entire life is I was sitting down at the park that was so I live in a place called Snowball Gate, and there's a park right in between Snowball Gate and Forsythia Gate that had the hockey rink that I used to skate to and play at, like, all the time. So on the last day before I moved, I went down to that park and Michelle met me there, and we sat on the swings together. She sat in my lap. We were swinging on the swings, like, we're going to get back. Like, don't worry. It's going to work somehow. Like I just remember, like, promising her and her promising me, like we will come back together here. And, like, we're going to make life work. It doesn't matter. Right now, I'm not 18, so I can't make my own decision. Like, I'm being moved. But, like, we are going to make this work.
Right. And I want to point out for everyone that was not the world it is now with digital communication, too. That was, like, barely you were texting at that time. It was like you're lucky to text with phones and whatever else. So it was not as easy as it was, too, with proximity and connection. It was a different game back then.
God, it would have been so much, like, being able to
FaceTime, my gosh, man.
See somebody and be able to connect with them still. And, like, because we had an extremely strong bond. And I remember this, the last day I ever saw her, it's the last day I ever saw her. And because 6 months later into the long distance relationship, she took her own life. She hung herself. And that's just a whole, my dad showed up at the school and pulled me out of school. Hey, to the office, called me down, and your father's here. And, and I come out to the truck and he's like, Michelle took her life. And dude, like, to go from my mom to, like, the resentment I had for my stepmom and my father, now all of a sudden the worst case, like, if you would have drawn out what's the worst thing that could have possibly happened to me in that period of life, it would have been the one person that I completely poured into and confided in taking their own life. And that happened. And now again, so I had to sit in a car for a 10-hour car ride while my dad drove me to her funeral and show up there. And, like, that was just such a shaping point where at that point I hit a rock bottom that nobody that wasn't living in my shoes every day will ever understand. Like I would go to school and I would just leave school. My parents wouldn't even know. I'd sneak out of school. I would get my truck and leave. I would just sometimes, like, I remember one day I was parked behind somewhere in Howell, like near the courthouse, just bawling my eyes out crying, thinking that I wanted to take my own life because I was just like, man, I just can't go through anymore. I can't go through anymore. The mom, when I was little, I kind of reframed it. I hate my stepmom. I just can't go through anymore.
Yeah.
So I got to this absolute bottom level, this just this most broken stage that I can ever describe to you. And I don't know, something happened. I got down to the pivotal question of like, do you kill yourself or do you try to make a life worthwhile?
Mm-hmm.
And I can't even tell you why I went the direction I went. And I was fueled more, Chris, by my anger and more by my resentment than anything else. I wasn't fueled by the happy kid anymore that was chasing my Aunt Di's vision of like, it's all about the love. That was not it. I was fueled by this incredible chip on my shoulder that said, you know what? I don't need anyone. I don't even want anyone right now. I want to take this thing on by myself, and I'm going to make a life that I can be proud of. Mm-hmm. And that decision did not happen in a short period. Like I had to go deep and dark. And then, like on my 18th birthday, I moved out of my parents' home, moved back to Pennsylvania because, it's like, I'll just run away and I'll start over.
Right.
Like I'll build the life I want. But then I was a disaster still. I was so depressed. I was dealing with so many things mentally that honestly I was letting my aunt down. I was like, less than 20 people in the world know what I'm about to say, and I'm going to say it on this podcast. I didn't even get to walk in my high school graduation or graduate regularly. I had to go and take extra classes. As a kid that was like crushing my ACTs, SATs.
I knew you were smarter than the average people by far. Yeah, no question.
I got selected for the John Hopkins program as a kid to like skip grades and go off and be in a school for gifted. But yet here I was, not even graduating high school because I was so depressed. I held a lot of pain in that period of time because my aunt tried so hard to like help me get through the end. I must have moved out before I was 18 because I was finishing my high school there. Yeah, so my timelines are a little bit off, but my aunt was letting me live with her and she was trying to guide me, but I was so damaged and broken that I started doing things that I'm not proud of and like letting her down and then seeing her disappointed in me was devastating because I'm like, man, like I love this woman to death. There's not a lot of people that I have this type of love for that have always presented me support. And my aunt's like, finding out I'm skipping school and when she found out I wasn't going to graduate, my aunt did what my mother did for her. She like grabbed me and was like, I'm going to drive you to summer school every day and you're going to finish this. And then I did. And, I got my degree or my high school diploma after. And most people don't know this part of the story either. I actually started SFS in Pennsylvania, not here. I think everyone here only thinks that I started SFS out of my basement. When I was living in Pennsylvania for probably about a year and a half at this time of my life, I started compiling all my old group of friends like Lou and Chris Levitsky and Shannon and all these people. And we were doing jiu-jitsu and we were training and I don't even think it was ever called SFS. I don't know. I'd have to go back and really see when that name came to be. But we were training and doing jiu-jitsu because I found that in high school. I guess we're going to bounce a little bit here, but I found jiu-jitsu in high school. And it was like the one thing that for a split second in time, my mind wasn't being destroyed. Yeah. It wasn't thinking about all the chaos in my life. It wasn't thinking about it was just thinking about the other human being that was trying to attack me. So it got me to just engage in the moment. And I loved the art of it. It was such a science. It was such a if you lock limbs in this configuration, another human being has to submit. It was mind-blowing to me. But I actually started training people for SFS in Pennsylvania, and I think that's when it was first called SFS, but I could be wrong on that. It could have come from Michigan first. But so I was training a lot of people out there. I was probably got up to, I don't know, not a lot, 12 or 15 people that I was training. And then as I started to feel a little bit better, I started to win some jiu-jitsu tournaments. I started to get my life a little bit back together because I was getting my internal world together. I realized that I can't stay in Pennsylvania. I can't miss my little brother growing up. I can't leave the relationship with my father so bad. I can't, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
like, so I ended up moving back to Michigan. And honestly, a big part of that was like, I had kind of let my aunt down, and I realized that like, yo, maybe it's you, because, you know, like your aunt loves you to death, and here you are skipping school and doing this with her. She doesn't deserve that.
Yep.
That's not her fault. Yeah, you've gone through all these things, but like that's not on Aunt Di.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it kind of pushed me back to Michigan.
Yeah. You know, just one more observation that just jumps out at me is, you know, if you were to take your own life for something, that would have been a very emotional response. And I think what maybe frustrated you and was so hard on top of the understandable emotional damage of both of those women doing that in your life was you just don't understand how they could have done that, how they could have left you, and why they don't think things could get better. Because like I said, I think you inherently have that, we can work on this, I have some control of where I go and my destiny. And, you know, I think that must have been so tough to just think, how did you not see a way out with me even in the way that I speak? So it must have just been so tough. But I think it's also that logic that brought you out of it, and your pure spirit of things can get better and I can figure this out. And, you know, it's interesting, man. Wow.
I think you're really right, because I am able to detach from emotion, and that might be just because of the painful situations that I've gone through where I've needed to take a step back and look at things as clearly as possible. And I really care about reality, and I really care about the truth, and I really care about having a ground to stand on that's solid.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
And you're right. Even when you hit those lows, I always still knew things could get better.
Yep.
Like, it's possible. It might even be insanely unlikely, but like I did know it was possible, and that could come back to that like relationship with the truth.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
and that's a good thing that for people that are listening or people that have struggled in their lives, no matter how low you get, it can get better.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember you just triggered a memory where the word possible used to be so powerful to me, because like when things were really down or I was really struggling or I was really having a tough time, I used to say to myself things like, you know, it's possible that things can get better.
Yeah.
It's possible that your future won't always feel the way that it does now. And those type of internal conversations are so vital.
Yeah.
Because that's what gives you the faith to keep going.
Yeah.
Because I'm not religious. Like I don't believe in, you know, I don't know how a lot of people feel to listen to this, and I don't mean in a derogatory way, but I don't believe in God. I don't believe in any of the things that people subscribe to that kind of give them a safety net. Like if you believe in God, it's kind of easier to be like, God has a plan. He's going to make sure I'm taken care of. I didn't have any of that.
Right.
I believe, I mean, there's definitely things much bigger than us. I would believe in like a universal energy or like a collected consciousness more than I would believe in like a divine God, you know, biblical figure. But I didn't have any of that. So, you know, a lot of people that I know in their life, when their life is extremely rocky or extremely messy, they turn to that faith. They turn to like, God is going to make sure I find another way out of this. If I pray, if I didn't have any of that. But you know what I did have? I had the truth.
Yeah.
And the truth is that no matter how low you get, you can turn things around. And maybe that like intimate relationship with the truth where like, because maybe if my world hadn't got shattered as a kid, I would have killed myself. As weird as that is to say. Had I not gotten on a path of reality is what it is, and it's not reality's job to cater to us.
Yeah.
It is our job to build our lives around truth.
Right.
Maybe I wouldn't have even got to that point.
It's funny because like, you know, it seems you did not have as shocking as you didn't have an emotionally damaging event from that. It was more truth, you're saying, and religion is very emotional, so that helps the emotional healing people have to do, which you didn't really have. So I could see how religion wasn't something easy to turn to, because it wasn't, the whole thing wasn't emotional for you, like you said. It didn't affect your trust with people, didn't affect your relationships, didn't affect anything. It was just the pure truth and logic of it that you were just relentless at finding. That was the only place you could find shelter and prevent things like that, understandably.
100%. The reason I could never attach to religion is it's a story. Maybe it's true. Maybe
But
it's
you
not.
couldn't verify it. Like
You cannot
about.
verify that. You cannot verify the existence of God. You can theorize. You can say, I believe. But listen, I believed that my mother had just gotten sick and passed away. And I was on a completely false story all the way up to that point in my life. So when that was shattered, I value the truth.
Yep.
Now, that doesn't mean like, that's why I support other people believing those things, because maybe, you're right. It could be, but it is not something that I'm able to build any of my life or personal identity off of, or what I believe in, because my beliefs have to be grounded in the truth. And if you could show me irrefutably, provably something to be true, I will take that as a basis of truth and I will stand upon that, which is also, I think, why I can dissect extremely emotional debates and arguments like what we saw in 2020, because I don't care about the emotion at all. I don't care about the fear of it. I don't care about the support of it. I don't care about this. I don't care about the story. I don't care about what this reality would lead to if it was true versus this reality. I don't care about any of that. I only care about what is true. And then from true, we can build. You know what I mean? So yeah, I didn't have religion. I didn't have any of the things. But you know what? Maybe the most profound, powerful thing in my entire life that allows me to be who I am is that my only relationship at that deep of a level is to truth. And you know what the truth is? Like my anti, like, you should build a life you love. The truth is, like, time can help heal wounds. You have the possibility of picking yourself up even when you're at the lowest places that you could imagine. You can be okay. Those are truths. And it's a strong foundation, man. You know what I mean? Because that can't be really taken from you. It is the truth. You know, there's always like the truth and then people's varying degrees of where they live in relationship to that thing. My goal is just to always get as close as I can. So we didn't even talk about how I even found jujitsu, because
I was just going to get into that.
During this story, I'll let you preface the next question, but I realized, like, because we're already talking about when I'm like getting a diploma, I started jujitsu at 14.
Yeah, man. Well, I just got to say again, it's just, you know, I love people that live it and walk it and have proved it in the most absolute radical ways. So to have someone who thinks like you do, who's still so impressive, but has had two of the most impactful life events that I think can happen to a person. I mean, to have one of those would be traumatic and earth-shaking and unimaginable. So to have two and to be who you are and live what you live, man, that's just, I keep telling you, one of my things I just admire the most and enjoy being around is that you have to feel it the way you do, because you have been challenged that hard at it. You know, most people don't live long enough to have things challenged that hard and to have to overcome it, and you're living it every day, man. So it's just so special. Like, and people don't even know this because they just know you as the energy radiating, charismatic, natural leader, cheerleader for everyone who has endless energy to get everyone else to their dreams, man. You know, so it's very special, man.
I appreciate that.
Yes.
I also think you've heard this said a lot, but like, if you experience real darkness or you go really deep down, you don't want to see others going through that. When you can understand that pain and the like emptiness feeling and the abyss, you do not want to see another human being in that. So if you can help people escape that, it's like, why wouldn't you?
And you've earned real belief to yourself that you can do it, because you've gone from and I know you're not the type of guy to ever compare. I've never heard you make one comparison or, you know, competitive statement when it comes to personal growth with people, but you know, you've gone through, you know, that's obviously as dark as things can get. So when it comes to helping people, you've earned the belief in yourself that you can do it from literally anywhere, because those are the two darkest spots people can be. So you could help anyone, man. I mean, that's as dark as it can go on the emotional scale. So I think that you earned yourself that belief and that passion to help people, man. Wow.
Yeah, and it gets back to that. If you know the truth and you can help other people with the truth, their life can be helped as well. Because, like, there's not a single person you and I could name that is not able to take some form of control in their lives and make some type of progress, regardless of their situation, regardless of their circumstance. No matter how much of a victim they think they are, no matter how crushed they've been, you and I know they have the potential to be better. And I know that without any question. Nobody can shake me of that. So I can't back down.
There is no worse starting spot emotionally than those two at that point in your life. I can barely imagine anything worse, man.
So let's go into how jiu-jitsu came into my life.
Beautiful.
Because I was drastically altered once I found jiu-jitsu.
Yes.
So I was in a physics class, actually. I was in physics in 8th grade, I think. So I was ahead because usually people don't do physics till high school. I want to say it's 8th grade. Timeline, man, this is long. I'm 34. So I was in my physics. I was definitely in physics. I'm in my physics class, and I'm sitting next to this kid named Michael Huang, and he had been talking to me about the
How old were you here?
like 14.
Okay.
So like 14 in like 6 months.
Gotcha.
I know I wasn't 15 yet because I had already put up a highlight video of jiu-jitsu at like 14 and 9 months. So because I just fell in love with it. So I was talking to this kid next to me, and he was like, "Did you watch the UFC last night?" And at this point in time, I'm still an incredibly depressed kid. I'm a loner. He's the only kid in the entire classroom that I talked to. It was an Asian kid named Michael Huang, and he was like my only friend in the class. And he's like, "Did you watch the UFC last night?" And I was like, "No, I didn't really." And so he's talking to me about it. And then he's like, "Oh, the jiu-jitsu is amazing." And I remember being like, "What's jiu-jitsu?" And he's like, "Oh, it's the ground fighting." And I said to him, like, "That stuff is lame. Like, who would ever want to learn?"
Too.
I was like, "Who would ever want to learn how to like roll around on the ground with somebody else and pretend you're fighting?" And he was like, "No, like you don't know who like Hoist Gracie and stuff is?" I'm like, "No." You know what I mean? I was like, I had trained some boxing with my dad growing up because my dad was a boxer. He'd show me basics, and my dad had always been fighting, unfortunately. My dad beat a lot of people up. So like I thought, like, "Oh, I know how to fight." Like you fight with these things. I didn't even think jiu-jitsu was fighting. And so basically he was like, "No, like jiu-jitsu is amazing." And so him and he got me to come out to the place he wanted to go train at, which was Warrior Way in Walled Lake. And this is like 2000, oh my God, like 2004. I mean, it was probably 2003. And we went out and
you were lucky if you had one gym, a couple gyms of freaking state at that point, man.
And at that point, it was really only gi. The head instructor was a purple belt at the time. Like, and I went in, I did the class, and man, like I just fell in love with jiu-jitsu. And I don't want to bounce too around with stories here, but my friend Mike caught me in a triangle choke at one point and choked me unconscious. And I woke up like looking at the lights, being like, "This is the coolest thing that has ever happened to me," because like I just couldn't believe that this science that you could just, like I said, lock limbs in different ways and
I was gonna ask if there was a moment. That was like my first trap and roll. I know I felt that same exact thing where I was like, you could do this with this, and I can use this, and oh my gosh.
And as a man that was incredibly analytical and intellectual, to realize that like, wait, there's something here, and I just like fell in love with it. Now I only trained at Warrior Way for maybe like 5 months at the most. And there was two things that I resisted out of it. Their form of classes, which this is not a dog on them at all, but their form of classes at the time was just not it was very traditional, and it's not what I was looking for. Not that, I mean, they had a great product. They did an awesome job, but it's just not what I wanted. And two, I didn't like the gi, like even off the bat, because a lot of my friends that I knew, like the people that I shouldn't even say friends because we weren't friends. Like acquaintances that I had, they were wrestlers.
Right.
And like I would see these wrestlers, and I remember I respected the wrestlers.
Yeah.
Like, I went to Heartland, and they had a really good wrestling team.
Yeah. That's where my brother went.
Yeah, they were beasts, man. I remember being like, okay, like these guys are studs.
Those were like the OG MMA guys in the state too, man. Those Heartland wrestlers,
Dude, they were studs. Heartland had a
state
tough
champs,
room.
man. Yeah, them and Davis are just crazy beasts.
Yep. It was CC. It was Davison and Heartland and CC were like the three mega forces of wrestling. And I remember being like, these guys are monsters. And then the jiu-jitsu, like the gi just didn't click with me a lot because I'm like, man, like nobody outside of this gym is going to be wearing that thing.
Right.
Like,
and you came from it fighting first, ironically, from your dad, which most kids don't.
Correct.
I mean, most kids don't think fighting first in jiu-jitsu. They get jiu-jitsu, then fighting. So.
Yeah, and I don't want to tell too many stories, but like I had been in probably 4 or 5 street fights.
Right, so you're thinking through that lens that people don't have. Yeah.
Like I'll tell one really quick one. I got jumped one time. My stepsister, her and I didn't get along well at all, had really angered this one kid for, well, I don't even know what it was over or whatever. I'm like walking home one day, like holding my backpack, like strolling home from the school bus. And this is maybe like 6th grade. Maybe 5th grade, because I was still in elementary school. And I just get absolutely cold cocked. This kid comes over behind me, D-rip, punches me in the face. I hit the ground. I can still remember exactly where I was when this happened. Like I could show you the spot.
Yeah.
I looked up and I get kicked in the face. So he punched me, kicked me in the face, kicked me a couple more times, like stomped on me. and then just ran away from the situation. And I remember, like, so that's how a fight goes, okay? Like, a fight is not a playful thing.
Right.
A fight is very violent altercation. Now, obviously, I got jumped. I didn't even get to fight back. I was, like, strolling home. I got derailed. And then I remember seeing his shoe full-on kick me in the mouth. And I was like, wow, like, and I had done some boxing with my dad, and I had watched my dad fight. And I'm like, okay, like, that is what combat is. But these people were spending so much time like, okay, I'm going to control this collar, and then I'm going to roll the pant leg, and then I'm going to do this.
Right.
And I'm going like, man, have you guys been in a fight? Because it's like extremely violent, and it's extremely like, if you don't seize control over someone quickly, or you trust a grip that's not going to be there. I had been through violent altercations.
And the top dogs were wrestlers too. So you're thinking, what am I going to do?
And I'm going like, okay, like, they're not wearing a gi. I can't control them. I can't.
And they can control me. Yeah.
I can't get them to the ground unless they want to take me to the ground. So quickly, you remember that relationship with the truth?
Yep.
That's what it was. I started like putting all the pieces together and going like, I love this sport. There's something here. But I don't really like the fact that you were wearing this uniform when I see these killers in the Heartland Wrestling Room that are savages. I've been in multiple fights, and I remember what these altercations are actually like, and how violent they are, and how fast they are. So I kind of left Warrior Way, but I became obsessed with jiu-jitsu. All I cared about all day long, if I was at school, I was talking to people about jiu-jitsu, and they were kind of like, all right, kid, like, what?
And your friend you mentioned did jiu-jitsu there as well that you trained with?
Yes,
Great.
Mike.
So you had a friend that was going through it with you.
Yep. So, and then he started training with me. So,
nice.
So I just started literally when YouTube was around, but it was like, way different than it is nowadays. I would just go online and type in like Jiu-Jitsu World Championships, and I would watch. And I would find the Marcelo Garcia, Shinya Aoki, Kazushi Sakuraba was literally the reason that I fought MMA. And I would just study these people for hours on end. Like, I would just sit and study them, and I would try to figure out because as an analytical mind that's only searching for truth, I'm like, why is this person beating this person? They both understand the same thing. If they're competing at world level, you know what I mean? I'm looking at it like, okay, they both know what a guillotine is. Why does this person get guillotined? What setup was used? What distraction was deployed? What was the timing and nuance? Yes. I was like, okay, why is this happening? And it became an obsession. Like, to be honest, it turned into 4 or 5 hours a day. The only thing that I really cared about, like, it gave my brain like an avenue to dive into that nothing else in the world had to matter during that part. So then, I decided to start competing, and I found success like super early on. Like when I was still in high school, my first ever tournament, I think I had, no joke, Chris, I think I had 5 months of training, and I went and there was a tournament in Atlantic City, New Jersey. Actually, the medal's hanging in the front room right now. That was put on by the Machado brothers. So incredibly famous. Jean-Jacques Machado was my referee. I didn't even know who Jean-Jacques was, but he's a legend.
Eddie Bravo's.
Yes. Mentor, coach. He's a legend, right? So it was called Battle at the Boardwalk, and I went down there, and I think it was 2005. So I've got, under a year training. There's a 2-year and under division. I'm like, I'm signing up. and I'm like, I'm going to do it. You know what I mean? And so I weighed in 124 pounds. They only had a 145 and under. They didn't even have a 35. So they had a 45 and under. And I had 5 matches, and I won every match by armbar from guard. All 5. I was the type of person that when I attached to something, I went like really psycho into it. Like I'm going to understand every nuance, different setups.
And no one will be able to stop me if I apply it like this.
So what I found was like in my school when I had gone to Warrior Way, I found that like the setup they were teaching was like you'd get 2 hands on the wrist, and you'd step on the hip, and then from there you would angle your body, and then you would bring your bottom leg up, then you would shoot your hip up, then you would bite the head, then you would pinch the knees and feet, and then pull down. And I went like, okay, that's a lot of steps. Okay, like, let me pull just the truth out of this. What is the concept? Okay, you need an angle. You need control of the limb before the submission is locked in place, and then you need the leverage to finish the mechanic. And very early on, like even the people that were training with me, like when 6 months in, I developed what I called the X arm, where I realized that I had a way better control from the tricep, and I could frame the person's head so they couldn't negate my arm bar by bringing their head down. And instead of trying to push off the hip for the spin, I had a powerful core, so I would use my obliques to spin, and I could do that so fast. Well, then what I started to realize was I could actually shoot the grip and then oblique spin almost simultaneously. So I would go grip, oblique spin. And I was in an arm bar in No joke,
Yep.
like a split second. Like if you
Yep.
watch some of my old videos, the speed that I can go from sitting
Yep.
in guard to full arm bar, you've probably seen some of them, was unreal. So I beat 4 people in a row. I had no wrestling,
Yep.
I had no top
Right.
skill at all. But I had honed in on like I'm gonna get guard,
Yep.
and when I get guard, I'm gonna armbar people.
Right.
And it was funny in the finals match, the other coach is sitting on the side, and he's watched me win every match by armbar, and
Yes.
he's got a team that's warming up legit. I'm there with my little brother.
Yeah,
You
yep,
know what I
yep.
mean? Like I don't even have a single
Yep.
teammate. And anyway, we go. The kid takes me down. I get to my guard. The coach is like, "Watch the armbar." No less than like a half second. Boom! I spin, get the armbar. I swear to God, to this day, I remember looking over, and as the kid tapped, the coach goes like this. He literally just smacks his hand on his face, and Jean-Jacques Machado took a picture with me that day, put his arm
Wow,
around me,
man.
and so I could probably find that picture. And it was the birth of a true obsession.
Yes, and that is loving jiu-jitsu at its purest form, is lethal from guard and, defense against wrestling and that logical system. That's what got, getting beat up by my brother from Heartland Wrestling brother and saying, oh my God, you can do this and you can use systems and you can do this. It's that same love, man. So what a jiu-jitsu forward story to have it come to life that way, man.
Once I got that medal, before you leave today, I'm going to show you, it's hanging in the front. It consumed my life. All I cared about was how do I improve my jiu-jitsu, because this thing is unbelievable.
Yes.
And it felt great. Like I had this guy who I didn't even know, I feel so stupid, like raise my hand in front of this whole tournament.
Right.
And I'm like this broken kid that
Yep.
didn't know if life would
Yep.
reward him with anything. And now all of a sudden I'm like on the cutting edge of, now I'm not on the cutting edge. I'm in the early 2000s. Gracie's came here in the 90s and they were doing this. But still, nobody was really doing jiu-jitsu.
Yes.
It was maybe me and 2 people in my entire high school. You know what I mean? So it became an obsession. I started competing and I had this dumb rule in my mind where it's the opposite of what most people do. Most people go like, oh, okay, like, you know what sandbagging is. Most schools, they make their people compete at white belts, so they've won like 20 white belt tournaments.
Right,
then they
right,
move
right,
them to
right.
blue. I did the opposite. I was like, okay, I won the 2-year and under division.
Right.
I'm gonna
I
go.
wanna learn.
I'm gonna
Yep,
go to the.
let's do it.
So I signed myself up, like no joke, like 4 months later for the 2 to
yeah.
5-year division. I was at a Naga, and I was like, I already won the 2-year and under.
Yep.
Why would I do it again? Not
Right.
thinking like, well, obviously, if you're well under 2 years of training, you should compete there. I was like, I'm gonna go for
Right.
it. Competed, submitted every opponent, won. And then there was a tournament right at my year mark, right when I was at 1 year of training. It was a Naga in Georgia. Yes, it was Naga in Georgia. And I remember the man I faced in the finals. He was incredible. So I'm at a year training, and I entered myself in the 5-year and up division. I was like, let's go. Like, this is dumb. This is like, I had no guidance, but I was just making my own
Right.
way. And I ended up submitting every single person in the tournament. I triangled the first guy. I armbarred the second guy, and then beat the guy in the finals by points, who I believe at the time was a brown belt. And I have a year of training.
Yeah.
I had absolutely no business winning. And then I won that tournament, and then it led on to I won a bunch of other things, but
man.
it just became an obsession.
Right.
So tournaments aside, I'll tell you one more funny story before we keep this thing rolling. So ADCC, that is the premier, most high level tournament out there. But like when I was studying like Mundials and like a couple others.
Yeah.
But ADCC is the pinnacle, right? There was an ADCC tournament in Michigan when I had like 2 years of training. I have no idea what ADCC is. I didn't even look it up. I just thought it was a local show throwing an event. And I'm like, I'm going to go compete at this ADCC event. So I go out there. I'm like probably 19. I'm 18 or 19 years of age, right? So I don't even know if I was 19. Yeah, I was definitely probably 18 years of age. I drive out there. I'm like, oh, I'm going to do this ADCC today. And I go and I compete. And I didn't know that they didn't score points in the first half of the match, but they scored points in the second half. I didn't even show up for the rules meeting. Like, because I'm just a young, depressed, lost kid. You know, like, because I look back, I feel like such an idiot about it. But I don't even show up to the rules meeting. I go to the tournament. I beat 2 or 3 people back to back. I get in the finals. I'm about to win the ADCC tournament. I'm facing a second-degree black belt who is out of Texas. God, I want to remember his name so bad. I don't remember his name. But anyway, you got to figure this. Listen, I'm a child, and I have no business being in this division. And we go. You either take him down or he pulls guard. I think I take him down. I pass his guard, get side control, mount this guy, take his back. I'm like, and he's a second-degree black belt.
Yep.
I'm like, I'm crushing this dude. And I'm playing. I'm trying to get the sub. It's not there. Da, da, da. He gets out and he passes my guard with like 12 seconds left. He gets past and he just holds on to side control. And I stand up thinking I've won.
Right.
I'm like, oh, I dominated that match. It was probably like 10-2 or something like that. And they raise his hand, and I remember being like, what? What are you talking? Like, I crushed him. It was not even close.
Yep.
Not knowing that like points aren't scored until I would have just rode his back out.
Right.
He couldn't have got out of my back mount. I would have just stayed on back mount, played body triangles, and played like.
Right.
But so anyway, he wins, and then I remember being really frustrated by that. I'm like, man, I dominated that match. What is this ADCC crap? I look it up and I find out it's like the top tournament on earth, and like I would have just beat a second-degree black belt from Texas, and it was a really big deal. And then that kind of got me to take jiu-jitsu a little bit more serious. The reason that one was important was like I didn't know any of the people going in. If he would have just said, "Hey, I'm a local purple belt," I would have believed it. I would have been like, "Oh, okay, cool." Like, but the fact that I was like, "Dude, I just had a war." With a second-degree black belt that is really respectable. Like, I looked him up, and he had been a black belt for, like, 8 years. And, like, I'm like, dude, I'm a child. And I gave him a serious match. So basically, I just start competing wherever I can. I'm trying to expedite this a little bit. I win a bunch of tournaments. I'm doing well. And then it's like, maybe I should start coaching people, like, for real. Because, like, I was doing jiu-jitsu with my friends in my basement and all these things. But it was like, maybe I should take this more serious. Man, like there's so much to this story. I feel like, because I didn't even talk about training people out of the basement or anything like that yet. So I'll let you continue to ask the questions and we'll navigate, but there's a lot to it.
Wow. You know, it's just, funny for a non-wrestler. I kind of found jiu-jitsu the same way. I was super athletic, but jiu-jitsu was the first thing that created separation for me, ironically. You know, as a non-wrestler and someone who was not into that, it was just like, wow. But I wanted to ask, obviously I know that this definitely hit the bullseye for you on truth and logic when it comes to jiu-jitsu, but struggling with anxiety, jiu-jitsu and things like that were pure mindfulness for me, so they really had that effect. But I know that wasn't your intention, but looking back, did you get some of the effects of just being present and in the moment, and did it serve a lot of that for you growing up, of just that other things beyond logic that gave you peace, like that yoga feeling, and mental and physical and spiritual? Did that give you some of that feeling as well, looking back?
Yeah, what I would say is it gave me an escape, because my normal reality was really kind of rough to accept, and I had accepted it, but it was very painful. But when I was doing jiu-jitsu, I was just a kid doing jiu-jitsu.
Yep.
I wasn't a kid dealing with all the other things in my life, and my mind was so engaged in the moment.
You have to be pure present. Yep.
That the real beauty of it was that I wasn't in all the chaos.
Right.
I was just in that event, in that moment, in that time. And that becoming a jiu-jitsu practitioner and feeling good about the results that I was having rebuilt my self-confidence, my hope for the future, my maybe there's something around the corner that's worthwhile.
Yeah.
So I would say the mindfulness was more of being in the moment. I wasn't just sitting at home being devastated.
Right.
It was an escape from that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And it was a reward for an external indicator that your logical mind could produce results, right? That there was some reassurance that, okay, this logic stuff works, and I can outthink things, and I can control things, and I can do systems and apply things to, and it was like a result that, wow, logic works. And I mean, jiu-jitsu is the embodiment of that physically. So that must have been just a big physical external reassurance that was like, wow, there's something with this, and logic's going to be rewarded in this movement and everything. And
100%.
Yes.
And looking back, my coaches, like Brandon Ficasi and Angelo Popovsky of Warrior Way were my first coaches. Like I said, I think they were purple belts at the time. They must have thought I was like, when I left the school at like 6 months to like, because I told them like, I'm going to go train on my own and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Even me now, knowing my story, I would have been like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like that is so ridiculous, because the chances of doing it that way and being successful when you have a path in front of you where people could just mentor you and guide you, they're so much lower. But just the way that I'm set up mentally, it was better for me.
Right.
I do better because, like, unfortunately, that seeking of truth, if an instructor teaches me something, I'm going to question it by nature. I'm not
Right.
just going to do it.
Right.
Now, if I can provably find that, like, okay, breaking this all down, this does seem to be the most efficient way to me, then I'm going to do it that way. But the way that my mind works is like, I don't care about what is currently done. I care about what is the maximum efficiency that we can seek out.
Right.
Hence, like the system that I try to teach here,
Right.
right? So I'm gonna actually kind of frame where SFS comes into the story.
Perfect.
Because you won't believe this. This is wild. This is like the experience you told me about at the coffee shop the other day. It's
Yep.
it's
Wow.
that wild of an
Yep.
experience. So I had moved back to Michigan, and I was living out here. And was it when I came back or was it before? Either way, I'm having a conversation on AOL Instant Messenger with my friend Alex Walker. And he's a kid that I'd love to get on the podcast one day to tell this because it's almost chilling. I had woken up from a dream, Chris, at about 2 o'clock in the morning from the most vivid dream of my entire life. And I had a dream that I was a jiu-jitsu coach and I was traveling around the world with a group of people and I was training them in martial arts and I loved my life and I made a profound impact on my community. I woke up from a dream and it felt so real and so like, and now most people would write that off like, yeah, it's just a dream. I woke up being like, that is my destiny. I can't describe it to you in
And
any
this
other
was
way.
after you had that feeling of after that tournament where you're like, there's something here.
No, this is before that.
Wow.
Yeah, that's why I had to go back to this.
Wow. Okay.
This is I had competed a couple times and I had found some success with jiu-jitsu. This is even before the ADCC thing. I wake up, I get on my computer and I'm like wired, man. I woke up from this like it felt like if I could wake up from right now back as that young man with the vision of this, that is what it felt like.
Yeah.
I woke up with this incredible like, oh my God, that is the future I want.
Wow.
That is what I'm meant to do. So I jump onto my computer and AOL pops up and Instant Messenger and Alex Walker was online. And I have this conversation saved somewhere. I need to keep it forever to show it one day. And I message him and I'm like, dude, I just had the most vivid dream. Like it was real. I dreamed that I was a jiu-jitsu coach and like and Alex has always been an incredibly intelligent man. Like you would love him. My whole life growing up, he is crazy intelligent. He like I can't believe he didn't go on to be like a NASA scientist. He's always just been so he like works me through this dream and he's like, well, tell me about it. And I'm talking about it. And he's like, oh, you were like coaching your own team? I was like, yeah. He's like, well, what was the name? And like, he could have just listened to me and been like, oh, go back to bed.
Yeah. Yep.
He didn't. He walked me through this where he was like, what was the name? And I'm like, there was no name. He's like, well, what would you name it if you had to have a team? And I was like, I don't know. And we just started bouncing ideas back and forth. And then Alex was actually the first one to ever say, he's like, dude, you're so passionate and like you have a certain energy he's like, it in a weird way, it ties into like your zodiac sign, which is a Scorpio. And I was like, what? Like, and I didn't really believe in any of that. I don't believe in anything that's not provably true. You know what I mean? So just like religion and all those things kind of bounce off. And he's like, no, I'm telling you, man. And I was like, well, I came up with the analogy. I'm like, well, I would almost rather have it be scorpion because the way that a scorpion kills its prey is it controls it with its claws and then it finishes it with a stinger, which is the way that a grappler will like establish a position of control and then finish with a submission. And he was like, all right, well, so you'd call it scorpion fighting? And I was like, well, maybe. And we bounced back and forth. And then for the first time ever, I typed, maybe it would be scorpion fighting system. And then we broke down like why system. And I was like, a system can always be modified and improved upon. If someone comes into my building tomorrow, like obviously I didn't have a building by then, but it's like if someone came into my life tomorrow and could show me a more efficient way to do something, we should take that in and create it into the system. It shouldn't be a style of martial arts. Like the reason a lot of the traditional martial arts were failing is they were trying to do the same things they were 50 years ago or 100 years ago. So the same like block that they would use and all this. I didn't like any of that because again, it is detached from the truth.
Right.
So I started being like, okay. And I remember saying like scorpion fighting system. And then we started talking further and further. And he was like, like what will your team colors be? This has all happened in that one conversation. And I was like, they'd be black and white because you only need that. Like in graphic design, the only colors you need to be able to express an idea or like a basic thing is like a black and a white. If I have a white piece of paper and I put black on it, I can give you an image. If I put black and white, I didn't want the extra. I didn't want the stuff that could be added but wasn't necessarily important.
Yep.
I just wanted simplicity. I wanted truth. I wanted like it, it kind of links my whole story together. So this conversation started the idea of Scorpion Fighting System. And from that point, man, I have been on a relentless path to create that. But like I said, the chilling part is, Chris, and anyone listening, that dream I had was like what I have right now. I don't believe in like fairy tale stuff or that, but I'm telling you right now, I dreamed of this life. And then somehow now I find myself here. Yeah. There's an incredible coincidence there. So, like I said, I don't want to get my timelines out of order, but when I was in Heartland High School, I was bringing people over to my house. Like when my parents would leave, we would move all the furniture out of the living room, and we were, honest to God, kind of like running a fight club. Yeah. Like there's videos of like we would be doing jiu-jitsu in the living room. We would be fighting. One time my dad came home and me and this guy were boxing, and I was like crushed. I literally land this massive right hand, like snap this guy's head back, and I look over and my dad is walking the house, and I'm like, oh no. And like we used to get busted because like we wouldn't put the furniture back in the same spot. Like and parents notice stuff like that. Yeah. And as a kid you don't. So like I was teaching here, I went to Pennsylvania to teach, and when I look back, like through the lens I have now, it's almost like, why were you teaching, kid? You didn't know anything. You were a child. You were having some success, but like I take teaching very right. It's very important to me now. But like that also tells me like don't kill the dreams of a young person, because like that was me, man. Right. Like so I was just someone learning as I went and then was teaching others. So I'm teaching SFS in both places. I come back. I had won a bunch of tournaments at this point, and then actually, I don't want to go further without your questions, but like what I would say is from that point, then I started coaching at like my first after all the basement trainings, because we trained in the basement for a long period of time at my parents' house. And then we trained on the floor of Brighton Boxing. Like literally we trained on the floor. And then it like kind of came to fruition. But I don't want to jump ahead too far. I'll let you ask the questions and I'll go around it.
And isn't it funny though, the interaction with your friend at night there that, it seems random at the time, but now looking back, it's so obvious that you see patterns of success, and it's like, of course, man, developing that vision and diving into it, it just seemed like a random activity you were doing, but now, of course, everything makes sense. It's no surprise that you are where you are, man.
It's weird, though. It's like, why that dream? I mean, I guess it's because I was obsessed with jiu-jitsu, and I wanted to find a life that I valued, and I do love people, and I have energy. So that was probably just my brain painting for me how it could all come together. Yeah. But it painted a vision so clearly, so strongly. It was like, hey, you are going to be a jiu-jitsu coach that goes around the world, and you're going to make a difference. Yes. I woke up with that out of a dream and then created it.
So you had that intense vision, and you wanted it 100% identified it. So what do you feel like was the first big concrete step you took towards it? I know you mentioned a lot of fragments of people coming in and out and that type of thing, but what do you feel like was the first concrete step towards that vision when you look back where you're like, that was my jump?
So, all right. So there's a couple things, and I don't want to bounce around too much, but like, so when I had gone back to Pennsylvania, I had actually started to make like a little bit of a fight club. Like I had a group of people, we were all training, and we would do jiu-jitsu in front yards, backyards, basements. We didn't care. We were training. You know what I mean? And we really enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. And when I finally moved back to Michigan, and it was like, okay, I got to be around my family. I got to do these things. Oh, God. Before I had moved to Pennsylvania too, I was teaching when I was still in high school in my basement at my parents' house, okay? But again, that was like a little fragmented. Right. That was like...
And it wasn't intentional. You didn't know that was going to end in being a coach, then you didn't want it to necessarily. Correct. Yeah.
Okay, so I am painting it clearly.
Yes.
So that was just me training with a bunch of friends. And we would train at bonfires, we would train at school, anywhere we could, we would do jiu-jitsu. I went to Pennsylvania, same thing. When I came back here to Michigan, it was a little bit more serious because I had won more tournaments at that point. I was really loving jiu-jitsu. I had already had the vision now, and it was like, okay, I want to create this. How do I do that? So I was training at I don't know how the relationship even got started. I think I went into Brighton Boxing to box. and I was practicing some boxing there, and John Chalback actually blasted me. We sparred one day, he cracked me with a shot, and I was like, oh my God. And then the next day we grappled, and I tapped him out a couple times. So him and I met like 16 years ago. Like it was so long ago.
So he's the first, if you ask who's the oldest, longest standing relationship you have with someone who's still training with you or interacting with you, is he up there?
Yeah, he actually might be the first, because I don't think anyone else, because
No.
just like Brian and Juan, everyone started in the basement. This was before the basement.
Yep.
So I'm teaching on the boxing canvas at Brighton Boxing.
Yep.
So I would do boxing, and then I would teach people jiu-jitsu there. And this is a perfect lead-in, because I was trying to figure out, like, why was I boxing? So during this period of time, I fell in love with Kazushi Sakuraba, like who he was as a person, what he was doing. Like, because I had already been studying all the jiu-jitsu, and he was the Gracie Killer, actually, was his nickname, because he had beat Henzo and Hoyler and Half and Hoyce, you know, in a 90-minute fight.
Yeah.
I remember, like, to me, that guy was a superhero. And maybe it ties back into, like, I remember when I was young, my father was my superhero, and I remember how powerful that was. Kazushi Sakuraba became a superhero figure to me. He became someone that was so much larger than life that when I would watch him, I felt this incredible inspiration. I felt this, like, man, that guy is something special. Like, he is not just another number going through life. He is something special, carving away, creating a Japanese legacy, creating a jiu-jitsu legacy, you know, and he was known as like the IQ wrestler or all of these things. And he was very cerebral in his application. So I went like down the rabbit hole into studying, you know, every Kazushi Sakuraba fight, all of his videos, everything like that. So that turned me into, in the early days of jiu-jitsu, I used to get this a lot. I would be doing jiu-jitsu or I would be teaching jiu-jitsu, and people would always say, in a real fight, that wouldn't work because I would punch you or I would do this or that and the other thing. Meanwhile, I'm thinking, like, jiu-jitsu was created for combat, right? But it led to, I have to fight MMA. I have to. Because at the end of the day, I'm not learning jiu-jitsu just to do jiu-jitsu. I want it for combat. I want it for self-defense.
That's the ultimate proof test of your system. That's why everyone gets tempted with it at some point in jiu-jitsu, because it's the ultimate test of systems. If you love jiu-jitsu for that, you're going to be tempted.
It's exactly what I felt like. I was like, because like I said, I had been jumped. I had been in very violent altercations. So I remember being like, okay, like, I need to test my jiu-jitsu in the fire. So, and this is before I started teaching out here in Michigan again. So I was training at Brighton Boxing. I was teaching jiu-jitsu on the floor. I was training also at my house. I was back to inviting people over to my parents' house. At this point, my dad accepted it when I moved back. He actually put mats down in the basement, and like we would have people come over and we would train, right? And so I'm training out of a basement. Kind of being a screw off, right? Like, I'm not taking it real serious in most people's eyes, but in my eyes, I'm going all in. I find a poster that said, "Want to fight?" and it had a phone number. And I was like, yeah. So, like, I called this phone number. It was Rough House Promotions, run by a man named Phil Davey, who had his own gym, and he was running a promotion. And I call him on the phone, and he's like, you know, yeah, blah, 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 this is Rough House. I'm like, all right, yeah, I saw that you guys have a fight coming up. He's like, yeah, it's Andiamos in Detroit. And this is like 2006, somewhere in there. And he's like, you know, where do you train? And I was like, oh, I train at my house. And he's like, what do you mean? You got like mats at your house? I was like, yeah, I train in my basement. He's like, oh, who's your coach? I was like, I don't have one. I'm just kind of studying my own. He's like, you don't have a coach and you're training at your house? I'm like, yeah, with a bunch of my friends. I remember hearing him chuckle on the phone. He like laughed at me on the phone. He was like, oh yeah. He's like, I think we can find you a fight. Come on out. So he's like, this, you know, this kid is training in his house with his friends. Like, he's going to get butchered. I go to his first show, which is Rough House Promotions in Andiamos in Detroit.
And these were no, like, for people that don't remember, these weren't like pretty boy fun, technical. There were no UFC. These guys were dogs, man. Like the Chuck Liddell days, these were rough, like the Pit and Arroyo Grande. Those were like some of the first places I remember going into it. It was a rough crowd. It was not
Listen.
average people that think jiu-jitsu is cool. It was pit bulls, man. Yeah.
I was the complete outlier. I was a very cerebral, intellectual, like I'm going to, basically like I'm going to beat you in a game of chess while you try to hurt me. That was
not the norm.
No, there was a bunch of dogs.
Yep.
I mean, that was like, you were just, if you were in MMA, it's because you were a tough motherfucker.
It was like a bare knuckle league today. Yeah, that was the scene, man. Yep.
You wanted to go fight.
Yep.
So I show up to the show and I weigh in at 127 or 28 pounds so I'm small, dude. I was like super small. Maybe I got to 130. But that I remember I weighed in full clothes and everything. Full clothes and everything.
How old were you here?
19.
Wow.
So I had just got back home because, like I said, I got my diploma in Pennsylvania. So the timeline's perfect. I'm 19 years of age. I signed myself up. I tell my dad the night before weigh-in, or the night before the event. I'm like, Dad, I signed myself up for a fight. And he's like, what are you talking about? He's like, you do jiu-jitsu with like your friends. Like these are fighters. Like what you were just saying. He's like, these dudes are like chip on the shoulder.
Bar
like,
fighters, dude. Yeah.
He basically told me like, you have no business competing with these people. And I was like, I'm doing it. And I was like, do you want to go or not? And he was like, all right, I'll kind of go I'm going to go see you get your ass kicked. And then like, hopefully it's, you're done with it after that. So I go down there, I weigh in, I'm full clothes. I'm like just maybe 130 some pounds. And back in the day, there was no matchmaking in advance. You didn't, like, for the people that are listening to us now, like all the kids in my team, you get to find out your opponent 6 weeks out, 8 weeks out. You can look up their camp. There was none of that. We showed up. Phil took us all in the back room. He took us all in the back room, and he literally went like this, Chris. I'm not joking. You guys are roughly the same size. You guys are close.
Yep.
You guys are going to fight. It was wild, wild west. So I get matched with a 6-0 kid that is 147 for my debut as I weighed in the 30s fully clothed. Right. I'm like, what? So, and what's funny is Phil was close to this other guy. I think he even trained at his gym, and so he's like, oh, this little kid's right. Andiamo's restaurant in Detroit, if you can picture this, it's an Italian restaurant. They pushed all the tables and chairs to the outside. They dropped a boxing ring, not even a cage, a boxing ring right in the middle of it.
Right on floor level or whatever, yeah.
So while people are eating Italian dinners, right, you're going to have some pasta. You're going to look in the middle and there's a fight, right? So I walk out, get in the ring, walk out to like Go to Sleep by Eminem. I'm like trying to fire myself up. We come out and, I'd only ever really done I had never trained MMA a single time really. Like I had screwed around with my friends. We put some gloves on, but I had never formally trained a single time. It was like, yo, put these gloves on. You try to hit me and let's see what happens.
Test jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I did a lot of that. I did a lot of like, I would test my jiu-jitsu.
Right.
But I had no formal training.
That's right.
So I go into this fight and I'm like, all right, we're going to touch gloves. I'm like terrified. I come out. As soon as I touch gloves, this kid just blasts me with the right hand. So I shoot a takedown. I'm not a great wrestler at the time. I pull guard and what's there? That armbar that I've worked from day one. So I slap the armbar on. I pop this kid's arm, and I think it was 8 seconds. 8 seconds. And the kid tap. And Phil gets in the ring, and I vividly remember this because I'm up, I'm yelling, I'm screaming. My dad is like, what just happened? Like, I thought.
Exactly. He doesn't even know what's going on. Yeah.
He doesn't even know what jiu-jitsu is at the time. He's like, I thought my son was going to get his ass kicked by these fighters.
When he pulled guard or something, he was like, oh, he's getting fucked up.
Yeah. Oh, my son's on the bottom. He's clearly he won.
Yeah.
So I'm like yelling everything like that, and then Phil Davey gets in the ring, and I remember him yelling like, "That was some sick ass jiu-jitsu." And then it just became an addiction, Chris, because I had to prove myself. Yeah. I wanted to be like Sakuraba, man. I wanted to be that guy taking on fear and all these things. And like I said, I didn't care about jiu-jitsu for sport. I cared about jiu-jitsu for life. I cared about jiu-jitsu for fighting. Right. I was like in a real combat situation. How good is my jiu-jitsu? And when I beat that guy in 8 seconds, it was like, all right, I need to fight again. And then I'll quickly expedite to I won't even bounce like that. So I win my amateur debut fight a couple more times. I think I've got like 7 wins under 30 seconds. Like when I got people to the ground, I was someone that was going all in on one element of the game.
Right.
And other people were like kind of, he's more of a kickboxer. I'm a wrestler. Right. I've got jiu-jitsu. But I was just a scientist. I was like a scientist fighting MMA. Right. I was like, I'm going to be able to drag you in an area.
Jiu-jitsu is the most obvious. Yeah, of course.
I'm I'm going to get you in a spot that you don't understand, and I'm going to get a finish out of that spot. And I was able to do so over and over. And I made a ton of bad choices. Like I remember I showed up to one fight. I weighed in at like 128 pounds. And my opponent no-showed. It was like a super shady thing. There was a lot of shadiness back in the day. And then they had another guy that was supposed to fight at like 55 who was walking at like in the 60s. And I fought him on an exhibition fight. The guy outweighed me by like 35 pounds when I'm a teenager. I'm like 19 years of age. He beat me. And I remember like there was no guidance. I had no coach. There was it was just a mess. But this is also a period of my life where I didn't think I'd be a professional fighter.
Right.
I didn't think I'd end up
Right.
I was just fighting to fight, right? So, like, there was no, like, yo, fight someone in your weight class, build yourself up. It was more like just, hey, test your jiu-jitsu.
Right, it wasn't a strategy or anything at that point,
Test your jiu-jitsu under any setting possible. You get into a fight on the street, test your jiu-jitsu. You get into this, test your jiu-jitsu.
Yes.
And then, actually, I'll let you take back over for a minute, but we're starting to build the ground story.
Yes. So 2 quick questions. I know that you mentioned Sakuraba having a big impact, and don't know too much about him, but I know he's probably, a big, a martial artist mindset, of course, all the Japanese lineage, is a ton of that. Did that give you, I know you hadn't had many, and not to assume this wasn't your dad, or you mentioned just not a lot of like mindset roles or things that you could say, that's an example for me for this. I know you're more of a truth seeker, but did that give you some, like a martial arts mindset, so to speak, or where was your, beyond the logical development of your mindset, where were you with kind of thinking about that side of it?
You know what he was? He was larger than life. He was a man that, in my mind, I'm a kid sitting in Heartland, Michigan, being so affected by the performances that this guy is putting on in front of thousands of people across the world. He was making an impact. He was larger than life. He was a man living so passionately and so fully that, like, it was reaching this child sitting in Michigan. I remember being like, that is incredible. That is a real-life superhero. In real life, superheroes don't fly. They don't shoot lasers out of their eyes. They inspire. They move people. They evoke emotion. They make you want to be greater than what you are. That's what Sakuraba did for me. He lit some type of flame in my heart that was like, you can be greater than what you are. And that is what you need to bring to the world. Because if you can bring that version of yourself to the world, that can make a tremendous difference in a world that needs it. How many people are out there like you that get to that bottom level but don't make the same decision that you made? You know what I'm saying? So I think the thing that I pulled from him so powerfully and so profoundly was he was just so much larger than life. That I was like, we have the capacity for that, but we have to relentlessly pursue that.
You know what's beautiful is I still don't hear any resentment or vindictive types of things with this, where someone in your position who reacted emotionally, what the questions I'd be asking is, was fighting your way to take control and control outcomes, and that fuck you and get all my anger out, or fear, a lot of that's athletics or fighting is that. It's strange that still none of that really came out for you in that. Even in fighting, it was the logic, it was the truth, it was still the shelter from emotions that carried you through. It's fascinating. It makes a lot of sense,
I remember my gas tank, or like the chip on my shoulder, was literally fueled by just, I know that I can be something incredible. And if people don't see that, I want to show them that. Like, that was my inspiration to do these fights and these things, was like, I want to show people that I can be more than what they realize. And then in turn, as a human being, I'm showing you that you can be more than what you realize. You know what I mean? But you have to dare to be great. You have to take on challenge that would cripple most. You have to put yourself in a stage where it's like, at that first fight, I could have got massacred in front of my father. And but by daring to be great, that is where you tap into the greatness.
So I know that now, obviously, you do so much mindset, just coaching and talking and development around fighters going into the ring for the first time. But besides that, though, where were you mentally going in? I know it's easy for people to probably say, "Oh, he had nothing to lose, and look where he came from. Why would he be afraid? He really started from nothing." I mean, But what were you going through? That mentally, or was it no fear? And just how does that look now when you look back? What was going through your mind, and how do you look back on it now? Just the emotions of stepping in,
No, to be honest, I had a lot of fear. I had a lot of, because I have extremely high expectation of myself. I'm like competitive to a level that it's sickening if I don't suppress it. I am a horribly sore loser. I do not take losses well. I have to actively suppress my competitive drive in a lot of things. So I would have so many emotions and fears and stuff about like not wanting to lose, not wanting to disappoint myself, not wanting to, have my dream taken from me. Like and it took me years to be able to say that. Like I was an incredibly sore loser. I couldn't handle defeat at all because I know my capabilities.
Right.
So if
and jiu-jitsu is the logical conquering of emotion, or the physical conquering of emotion in a fight. I mean, that's literally what it is. It's conquering emotional fighting with pure logic,
Exactly. So when I would walk out there, and this is going to sound very arrogant, but I would step into that ring like I know I have the capability of beating you. Regardless of who stood across me, I was like, I know that it is within my possibility that I can beat you.
Yes.
I just have to be on my game and be at my best, and I can win this match.
Yep.
But like all the emotions were definitely there. Like I was a very nervous fighter. Between my amateur debut and like my first fight in Brazil, or even my pro debut, where my pro debut got changed last minute and I was fighting a guy that I know I'm better than, because I was supposed to fight this really tough guy, and then he backed out like 6 days out, so they had to find. But I'm just a nervous person, and I think that relates to I know my capabilities. I know how good I can be at things.
Yep.
I know when I go all in on math or hockey or jiu-jitsu or combat that I can rise to the top. I've always been that way.
Yep.
Well, that creates an incredible pressure, right?
Yes.
So like a lot of people are like, oh, did you just know you were going to run through your opposition? Logically, yeah. I legitimately thought like I would stand across the ring, or I would square up with these guys and I would look in their eyes and I'd be like, listen, like I know I have the capability to beat them. But the emotional side is like, but what if?
Right.
What if this happens?
Right.
What if that happens?
Right.
What if, and as weird as this sounds, and I've probably never said this publicly either, as I've gotten older in life, I've had to try as hard as I can to box my ego and competitive drive and stuff, because I have an incredibly unhealthy ego.
Your neutral is destructive for most people. Yeah, I got you. I get what you're saying. Yeah, your baseline setting's aggressive as hell.
So you might understand that, but it's like I don't want to trample other people. I don't want to make others feel bad. I don't want to shine. I don't want the spotlight on me. Like I can do a bunch of things where I'm physically gifted, but I don't want to be like, ha, look, I'm better than you. But there's a certain part of my spirit that if I don't suppress that, it comes out. And then I have this weird internal battle between the man that I think I want to be and the man that I have the capability of being. And like, I don't know how to merge those correctly, because your ego or your drive, or like, I know with being highly intelligent and skilled in these other things, like I'm like, oh, I can be this. And that like, it wants to propel you to the top. But then on the human side, it's like, man, I don't want to come across as arrogant. I don't want other people to think I'm this, that, or the other thing. I don't want them to feel lesser in my, like, around me. So I have this weird internal battle that has always gone on. And to be honest, I think me shunning any type of accolades or spotlight or anything has actually damaged my capabilities in a lot of ways, because I so actively try to suppress being too big. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know if these words will even hit people's frequencies and understand them the way that I'm trying to say them, but I think you get it, because you're an extreme winner too.
It's your greatest strength, and overused strength's a weakness. So it's just, that's a constant balance of, managing the gap between that and other people's baseline, but also, that's our greatest strength. The vision, the impatience, passion, that's our greatest strength, man.
See, and that's the beauty of life. Like, you have to find how this all connects to really be your best.
Yep.
And not burn yourself down.
Yep.
Because I know I could go off the deep end with my competitive drive. I know I could go, and to be a person I'm not proud of. And like, I don't want any of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, on the emotional side, man, I tell you what, I definitely still felt a ton of those things, and I felt the nervousness, but like, there was always that self-confidence and the truth of like, I saw what I was doing in jiu-jitsu competitions to people that were jiu-jitsu specialists. So I knew that, like, listen, if I get these fighters to the ground, they're not going to be ready for what I bring to the table.
Right. Wow, man. And let's see, I had a good jiu-jitsu question follow-up.
Well, actually, I have one point that I'll make while you think about that question.
Yep.
When I started to really fall in love with MMA, with Sakuraba, with wanting to fight, I actually started to detach from jiu-jitsu a little bit, because especially back in the day, and you'll remember these times, jiu-jitsu was very, very I don't know, I don't want to use the word cult because that's not the word, but it was a very tight knit,
Right.
like,
Protected, traditional, and
yes,
yes. Yep.
jujitsu people shit on karate people. Jujitsu people shit on taekwondo people. Jujitsu people even like made fun of boxers and kickboxers and wrestlers. Like, we will just strangle you, and there's nothing you can. They were very like
Right.
holier than thou.
Yep.
And I started to separate pretty strongly from that after maybe 5 or 6 years of training, because I'm like, guys, for as much as you are hating on a karate practitioner for his limited martial art, what you don't realize is if you don't learn to wrestle, if you don't learn how to box and kickbox, and you don't work on your athleticism and these other things, you are the exact same thing that you are preaching against.
Yeah.
So while you're actively being like, oh, karate sucks, I can't believe you waste your time with that martial art, that's another person that is pursuing progress, and they are
Right.
trying to be better, and they are trying to learn a martial art. And their martial art in a straight competition, karate versus jiu-jitsu, is clearly less effective. And it's been proven over
Right.
time that the majority of the time a jiu-jitsu person will win. But that's back to that search for truth.
Right.
It is just as narrow-minded.
And not everyone's doing it to do the best to win martial arts. They're doing it for other reasons,
100%.
Yes.
So in the jiu-jitsu culture, there started to be this little bit of hatred for anything that wasn't just straight jiu-jitsu. And I just didn't view it that
Yeah.
way. And I'm like, listen, if jiu-jitsu is a martial art, you guys should be actively seeking out some stand-up training, some wrestling, some. So when I got into the MMA avenue, it changed me a lot as a martial artist and as my view for jiu-jitsu. Although, if I had to pick one thing, without a doubt, my love for jiu-jitsu runs incredibly deep, and I will always like the science of jiu-jitsu. Forget any of the political stuff or the things in the jiu-jitsu community. My love for jiu-jitsu will never
That's
die.
at your core of this love.
Will
Me too.
never die.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
what the founders of jiu-jitsu did to show the world the truth,
Yep.
I will respect that to eternity. But there was a big breaking off at that point in my life where I was like, these guys are blinded by their own bubble the same way they're claiming all these other people are blinded by their bubble. So then I started being like, okay, my goal for martial arts was always to be the best martial artist I could be, the best fighter I could be. So then I actively
yep.
systems. Because listen, if you're a great jiu-jitsu, let's say you're a jiu-jitsu black belt and I bring in a D1 college wrestler and you guys are going to get into a street fight, you may never even be able to get him into a single jiu-jitsu situation before he knocks you out or slams you on the concrete and ends. You've spent 10 years of your training how to be in jiu-jitsu,
Yep.
and you may not be able to use a single tool
Right.
because you didn't expand your skill set to a larger degree.
Yep.
Now, if you just do jiu-jitsu for the community, for the lessons, for the technique, for the fitness, that's fine.
Right.
But then you shouldn't be shitting on people that are doing the other things. You should just be
Mm-hmm.
saying, hey, I get these wonderful things from jiu-jitsu.
Yep.
Because jiu-jitsu definitely does that. But there was a big splitting at that point. And I had already been an outlier again and a loner again because I didn't like the gi.
Right.
And you know, if we wound the clock back 15 years ago, it was like there's gi jiu-jitsu and then there's the weirdos.
Yeah.
Nowadays, no gi is everywhere, and like
Yeah.
it's super accepted. But back in the day, I was like, I don't want to learn how to fight you with a rope around your neck. I don't want to learn how to manipulate you
Yeah.
with your belt. Like people would be like, well, what if they have a jacket on? It's like, what if they take the jacket off?
Right.
You can't take your head off. You can't take your tricep off. If I learn to control
Right.
you with those like a wrestler would, then I can always trust that.
Right.
Dude, I never realized how much my story connects back to that one moment where everything is a search for the truth with me.
Yep.
Everything, man.
Yep.
So it's like, don't teach me how to control your collar. Teach me how to control your neck and your head
Mm-hmm.
because I can count on that.
Right.
You're not going to remove that. You might remove your collar,
Yep.
right? So I started falling in love with MMA. And then during that period, I won a couple more jiu-jitsu tournaments and I got a phone call that changed my life. I got a phone call. I was teaching at Brighton Boxing Academy, just a couple people on the floor of a boxing ring. And this guy, Matt Straczynski, the former owner of Gladiator MMA, calls me. I answer my phone. It's like one of those flip phones back in the day. Like you said, old school technology. I'm like, hello. And he's like, yeah, this is Matt Straczynski, owner at Gladiator MMA and the Street Soldiers Fight Team. I still remember that introduction. And he goes, I heard that you are pretty good at jiu-jitsu. And I was like, yeah, I've won a couple tournaments. And at this point, I've won quite a bit. And he's like, well, why don't you come over and try out for my team? Like, I don't know if your jiu-jitsu is going to work over here. We do new age jiu-jitsu, but you're welcome to come and try. And I remember being like, what? What are you talking about? New age jiu-jitsu? Like, I'm doing jiu-jitsu both in MMA and in, jiu-jitsu competitions, and I'm winning in both. What do you mean my jiu-jitsu might not work with you guys? And so I schedule it to go over there, and I get off work at Champion Chevrolet at the time, and I'm in like a button-down shirt, I think a tie and dress shoes and stuff. And so you'll enjoy the story because Tim Farr was like the like enforcer at Gladiator at the time. Like, you know how there's just a mat enforcer. When someone comes in and the level needs to be established or they need to be put into place, like there's a mat enforcer. Tim Farr was that guy. So I like come walking in the door, and you got to remember, I'm like 130 pounds. I'm a little guy. And Tim is at the door, all just jacked up like this. You got to have him tell you the story. He's like looking. So, and at the time, Tim was a rough and tough dude with a.
Yeah, that's the guy I think of when we mentioned like that generation of MMA fighters back then. That's Tim Farr, baby.
Dude,
yeah.
and he was rough. He was tough. Tim was a badass, man, and he was fighting because he had a lot of conflict and he wanted to fight.
Classic MMA brawler, man. Yep.
I wanted to like break down the science of the game. He wanted to break your face. That was the difference. So anyway, we come in. I swear to God, Tim pushed me out of the way. I'm like walking in the door, and I like kind of got in his way a little bit, and he like moved me to the side. And I didn't find out about till later. He was waiting on this like James Gray person, and he just thought I was some young dude.
Right.
He just moved me out of the way.
Yep.
And so I like went into the gym. I put my stuff on, and then Matt's like, "All right, well, why don't you show some of your jiu-jitsu?" And I was like, "Okay." And I like grabbed I think Jake Lamb, and so I'm training. I'm like trying to teach a little bit, and I felt super disrespected. Like while I'm trying to show some stuff, the guys are kind of like snickering and chuckling, and like I don't know what they were training, but it like wasn't what I was showing, right?
Yeah.
And then Matt was like, blah blah blah, like, all right, why don't you train live? And then Tim comes walking back into the training area, and I remember his face to this day being like this is the guy, like, because he like blew me off.
Yeah.
He thought I wasn't him. He thought I was just some dude coming to train. So he comes out on the mat, and Matt's like, all right, well, okay, I see what you're coaching. It kind of makes sense, blah, blah, blah. Like, why don't you do a live round with Tim? Now, Tim at this time is like 200 pounds, diesel as can be.
Yep.
It's six-pack. I mean, this is when Tim is in his prime, and, I'm little. And I remember being like, oh, this guy is going to murder me if he's,
Yeah.
I don't think he was a pro yet, but he was he had
Right.
fought a lot, and he was well respected.
If he knows any jiu-jitsu, I'm fucked.
Yeah, I was like, I'm in trouble here, boys. And like, so we touch hands, and I'm like, all right, right off the bat, like I'm gonna hit this dude with some shit he's never seen before. So we like shake hands. I feint a takedown. He reacts, and I do what's called a flying inverted heel hook. I jump, switch my legs over, catch his heel, land on the ground. I have a full invert, and I start to pull it up. He's like, ah! He like taps immediately. He's like, what? And like, and we get back to our feet, and you can see now everyone is in this like, wait,
Yep.
what just happened?
Yep.
Like, that's our mat enforcer right there.
Yep.
And Tim was kind of like, no, let's go again. So we shake hands, and he shoots and grabs a single on me, and he goes to dump me, and I invert and roll through underneath him and catch him in a knee bar. And I tap him again. And then I don't know if I tapped him a third time or not. We either did 2 or 3 goes, but I tapped him all 3 times in under maybe 20 seconds. Mm-hmm. And then Tim just shook my hand, and he was like, dude, like, I hope you're a part of this school. And then he went up to Matt and kind of was like, I don't know what you want me to do, but like, if you want to jump on the mat and roll with him, like, that kid's good. Matt comes up and gave me some excuse why he couldn't train with me,
Yep.
But then he hired me that day.
Hell yeah.
So he's like, hey, I want you to coach jiu-jitsu for this fight team. So that was a pivotal moment, because before that, I was fighting, but I wasn't teaching anyone else how to fight. I was just showing my friends jiu-jitsu. They would come over to my house. We would do jiu-jitsu. I would go and compete in MMA events, and my friends would come, but none of my friends were really learning combat.
Right.
They were just doing jiu-jitsu with me.
Right. And you were using them to learn, too, and explore and experiment. You weren't trying to necessarily teach people the structure. You were just trying to also get your work in, man.
Listen,
right?
when I say teaching, I was smashing people with what I had learned.
And throwing up a tip or two, yeah.
Well, and then showing them exactly how I was
yeah.
getting them to hope that they would like find a way to deal with that, so that I could find a way to deal with that. So like when I teach now, okay? Back then, I was just slaughtering people and being like, this is what's happening.
Do something.
Figure it out. You know what I mean? Like, I would probably keep your elbow in. Like, so I got hired to teach an MMA school, and that was a really important moment in my life, because SFS is kind of what I was teaching people at my house. We had an SFS jiu-jitsu team, and we went and did some tournaments and stuff, and like we had won some, but it was very, 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 very small. I get hired at this MMA school, and it goes great. The fighters are loving it. I'm teaching them jiu-jitsu. They're doing well. They're getting excited. I realized that people love my energy, which I kind of knew most of my life. Like when I'm at my best, people radiate. They just, I have a gravitational pull.
And you knew you had this passion, love for
Yeah.
it just radiated from you when you were doing jiu-jitsu.
So I'm teaching all these people jiu-jitsu. We're loving it. We're forming bonds. Now, 4 weeks goes by and Matt hasn't paid me. And he was only supposed to pay me, I think, like $15 a class.
Something like that, yeah.
Like it was something so small,
Yes.
but like I was working all day at Champion Chevrolet, and then I would go there and I would teach. I don't know if I taught every night or 4 nights a week, but like I was teaching a lot for 15. Like, dude, cover my gas money. So like a month goes by and he still hasn't paid me, and I'm like, so I go into his office and I'm like, dude, like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, well, things are really tough right now. Blah 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 blah. Like, you know, I'll find something. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna keep coaching. Another month goes by, Chris. Another month. It gets to 3 months. I have still not received a pay for a single class. And I'm like, are you joking me? Like, this is insane. So I think I ended up teaching for free. Like, we got into a huge argument. He's like, money's just so tight. And I'm like, yeah, but you can't tell me you're going to pay me and then have me work for free and bring all these students in. Your students are winning. I'm teaching the team. You know what I mean? And, like, you should be giving me scraps. You're not doing it. So then it gets to the point where I'm like, you know what? I'm going to leave this school and I'm going to start my own team. That's what I'm going to do. Because, like, there's no point in me wasting my time here teaching under someone else when I could just do things the way that I want to do them, teach them the way that I want, and then there's no money exchange being involved. So me and that guy got into a huge falling out. I left that gym, and I actually feel bad because I had a lot of people that I cared about there. Yeah, like those students, I cared about the students, but it was like so I went and my first ever purchase at my home at Fowlerville was like 9 little mats. Like I got like a little tiny mat space. And actually, to get that correct, I didn't purchase them at Fowlerville. I had a condo right before I bought my first house. And if you want to hear something embarrassing, imagine being like an early 20s man. And when you open the front door to my condo, which was at Westbury, you know where Westbury condos are, you open the front door, my entire living room was just mat. I had no furniture. I had nothing. There was a TV mounted on this wall, and it was just mats. So if you came over to my house and you were in my living room, you only had a choice of sitting on the mats, which is going to get you to do jiu-jitsu. You know, like sitting down to watch a show or doing jiu-jitsu. That was it. And then I had a normal kitchen, normal bedroom. I had a 1-bedroom condo, bathroom, and a kitchen. But my living room was just these tiny little mats I had bought. I took those mats to my house in Pallyville, and I was like, you know what? Gladiator's not working out. I'm just going to teach people here. And so I worked with a man named Jeff at Champion Chevrolet, brought him over to my house, started teaching him jiu-jitsu. He had heard me talking about it for so long, and he was like, dude, what is this stuff? Like, why are you so obsessed with it? I'm like, come train. He falls in love with it. He's training. I met Juan Perez. Juan Perez was the head, it was like a 3rd-degree black belt at Kills at the time. He had come into Champion Chevrolet to get his vehicle serviced. There was a black belt magazine sitting on his passenger seat. So when I got up to the car, I'm like, oh, you do martial arts? He's like, yeah, I do taekwondo. I was like, oh, I do jiu-jitsu. And he's like, oh, what's jiu-jitsu? And I'm like, oh, it's ground fighting. He's like, I want to try that. And if I had $1 for every time somebody said they would want to try that, I'd be rich. So I'm like, well, how about tomorrow, 7 p.m. at my house? Come over and we'll do jiu-jitsu. No joke, Chris. 6:58.
I love that, man.
I'm like, no. He comes over. He falls in love with training. Juan was like my 3rd student ever when I had officially started teaching out of my house. So then to expedite the story and not waste time with this, the basement crew grows. We start teaching out of the basement. We're competing out of the basement. We even start having people that are fighting MMA out of the basement. Like Brian had started fighting MMA out of the basement. I was fighting. I'm not sure if
Josh or
Wojo. No, Parisian wasn't there yet. Tim was training with me when I was at Gladiator, and then he was coming into the basement, but he hadn't transitioned. Because Tim was still coaching at Gladiator. So he would coach at Gladiator and then train with me in the basement. So, but Wojo, do you remember him?
Yes.
Wojo was in the basement. Juan was in the basement. Brian, so
was Vish pretty early with you too, or was he later too?
No, Vish wasn't until Total Fitness Center.
Okay, wow.
So Vish was like 5 years into it.
Way early. Yeah, man. Wow.
So we start literally having people fight in MMA. And we're calling up promotions going like, yeah, we train out of a basement, da-da-da. They're putting us on cards. We start winning MMA. We start winning jiu-jitsu. It gets to the point in my house where my neighbors think I'm a drug dealer because every night, Chris, the whole road would be lined with cars all
Yep.
the way to the end. And we got to the point where, no joke, we had about 30 people training jiu-jitsu at my house regularly,
Yeah.
where we had so many people in the basement that everyone would come downstairs. They would learn the technique that I was teaching, and then half the groups would go up to my living room. They would go upstairs, they would go on the carpet, and they would drill the technique and then come back down with questions.
Yep.
It was infectious. We brought people of all walks of life together to share in this community and this energy and jiu-jitsu to build their lives. And what we didn't realize is we were building ourselves, we were building community, we were building network, we were building love for each other. Like when you do jiu-jitsu, you get a deeper relationship
Yep.
with someone. It's not like the casual conversation. You're trying to strangle each other.
Yeah.
So it gets to the point where I'm working at Champion Chevrolet at the time, and I had quickly rose through the ranks of that company from I was a porter in high school making minimum wage, was $7.40 an hour for the people at that point in time. $7.40 an hour. I was cleaning gutters, washing cars, being treated like crap by the management and basically, learning about business for the
Yep.
first time. But I quickly ascended the ranks of that company. And I don't know if you want to hear about that. If you ask, I'll go more in detail. But I ended up becoming not only a service advisor, but then like the lead service advisor, then the lead guy that trained all new service advisors coming into the company per the owner.
Yep.
So like they would hire a new employee and they would put them with me to learn from my processes, my system, my people skills, my
Yep.
my efficiency. And the same way I broke down jiu-jitsu, and I would search for truth, and I would the way I created the X arm bar that gave me immediate success.
Yep.
My boss would teach me how to do something in the service world, be like, I want you to run this report, do this, do that, do this, do this, do this, do this. And if I found a more efficient system, I would completely revamp the thing.
Yep.
I would produce way higher results, more efficiently, faster, with less stress. And then I was in an environment where they hated me for that.
Yep.
And they would get all over me for it. Even though I was handling double the claims of some of the other people. My customer satisfaction was higher than everyone else. I did the most, in categories, I was blowing them out of, but they didn't like that I was doing it my way.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in a culture that was trying to suppress that.
And isn't it funny that it probably felt random and stylistic that you liked that? But again, looking back, so obvious. Another thing that's so obvious. Yep.
I am a person that
Yeah.
I cannot be given, you have to fit in this box. What I need to understand is, if I came to work for your company and you said, this is our problem, this is the solution that we're trying to achieve, this is the result that we need to get there. I am masterful at going from this to that.
Right.
But I fail miserably when someone says, you need to go A to B to C to D to E to F. Because if I find a way to go A, B, and I get to F way more efficiently,
Yep.
and I can provably show you that the results are better. Because if they're not, then I revamp.
Yep. Yep.
But if I can show you it's better, I have to be in an environment that supports that.
Mm-hmm.
And when that works, it's tremendous because I can impact major change,
Right.
major growth, major
Right.
progress, but I can't be boxed, right? So I had a manager that really tried to box me hard. I went all the way up to the top of the company. So at this point, I'm teaching out of my house. I'm working during the day. I've got maybe $20,000 to $30,000 just sitting in the bank, and I'm like, you know what? It's time to make a change. And I don't know what it is about my dreams, but so it was 3:00 in the morning on a Tuesday. I still remember I had fallen asleep on the couch. I had taught jiu-jitsu that night for 3 hours. Brian stayed. We trained for a really long period of time, and him and I were mid-conversation. I literally passed out on the couch. He just left. I wake up at 3:00 in the morning because I'm not in my
Yep.
bed, right?
Yeah.
And same thing, man. I woke up, and it was really weird. I was super unhappy. And I was like, why am I unhappy? Because, man, I'm winning MMA fights. I'm winning jiu-jitsu. I have friends now. People respected me. I'm looking at my life going yo, why are you miserable? What's going on? I didn't know if I was just dealing with some of the
Yep.
stuff in my past.
Yep.
And then I would have been fine with that. But my brain was no, that's not it. You're not doing what you're meant to do. You
Yep.
kind of are.
Yeah.
You're going 10% in. Are you a 10% person? Should you be going to Champion Chevrolet in the morning? Is that your destiny? I had this internal monologue, and it was a switch flipped in my brain. I was laying there on that couch, and it was you can go back to the dealership if you want. You can go into another company if you want. Why are you afraid that if you lose that job, anything's...
Yeah.
Be a jiu-jitsu coach. And it hit me so profoundly that the American dream that I was sold just wasn't true. I had my house.
Right.
I bought the Mustang Cobra. I got a 72-inch TV in my bedroom. I got $30,000 sitting in the bank. Like everything that was supposed to, I'm 22 years old. I own my own home.
Right.
Everything that was supposed to line up to make me happy, I didn't care about any of those things.
Yeah.
I started working through my mind at that morning.
Yeah.
And I'm going, dude, I would trade my house, my car, my everything. I would live in a 1-bedroom apartment with nothing again. I would go back to the man that had nothing if I could genuinely chase what I want to do. And I went back to sleep, and I woke up that next morning. Like, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Office Space, after he gets hypnotized and he wakes up and he's just a different man. That's who I was. Wow. I went into my boss and was like, hey, I'm going to put in my 2 weeks notice.
Yeah.
And even though I thought my boss hated me because he was so condescending, he was on me about everything. He was like, no, like, what do you, no, like, you're our best guy. Like, you got to stay, da-da-da. And then he went and got his boss, who came and sat me down and was like, dude, like, you're going to be making over $100,000 in no time. Like, you're going to probably run a dealership one day. Like, just chill out. And I was like, nope. And then, like I said, I don't know if we go into my work story, but the owner had changed my life by giving me an opportunity that I probably didn't deserve yet, but he believed in me. And I made him believe in me. And so I went to him and with respect was like, Len, I got to do this.
Yeah.
I got to chase what I love, man. Like, you chased what you love, and now you're worth $1 billion, and you have this amazing life. I have to chase what I love.
Yeah.
And he supported it. And he was like, go and do it, man.
Yeah, man.
And then, so I didn't know shit about business. I didn't go to college. I had my real estate license. That was the only college that I had done after high school. I got a real estate license.
Yeah.
And I realized my heart wasn't in it, so I just didn't do anything with it.
Yeah.
And then I opened my first ever place. I heard about this place, Michigan Sports Academy. It was called MSA. It was right by the Pepsi plant in Howell. And I went in there and I met the owners, Debbie and Carl. It was a husband and wife. They ran a baseball thing, but they had this one little part of the building that was about 1,500 square feet that they didn't use. And I was like, this is going to be SFS. And I got mats, and wish I had a friend help me out. I got mats. I put them down and didn't know anything about business. I bought all the gear. I went out and dumped all my money, and I bought 20 pair of boxing gloves and mitts and all these things, and I put it in this place, and I said, okay.
Yep.
Now imagine going from I had never charged someone a single cent to come to my house.
Right.
To just blunder into opening a business in a warehouse where I'm going to have a monthly overhead now.
Yep.
And I'm going to have to start charging membership. I don't know anything about
no
pricing.
income.
I don't know anything about my value. I have no income at all.
Yep.
And I just go for it, man. I just straight up went for it.
Yep.
And, and then MSA started to grow.
Wow. So can I take a quick bathroom break, 10 second
Oh, of
bathroom
course.
break?
Yeah,
Yes,
absolutely.
okay.
So like I was saying, we at that point, we opened our first ever SFS location at MSA. And it was Michigan Sports Academy. So SFS was just inside of there. I did that with no income, no idea about business. You can imagine, because you are a serial entrepreneur and you understand what it takes to establish a business. And so I basically just literally jumped out of an airplane with no parachute at all.
Yep. Wow.
It was crazy. And so from that point, the beautiful part was I was forced to learn.
Mm-hmm.
There was no, is someone going to come to help me? There was no,
right.
Can I fail? It was you have to learn.
And you knew that's what you wanted to do. You started feeling the response that this is what you wanted to do, right? Got that clear response from the universe, from whatever, that this is what I'm meant to do. I love this, and I'm going to make this happen.
That's, I think, what made it easy. So from that night, when I woke up and I realized that, you're not pursuing your destiny. Do you remember that dream you had? You're supposed to be a jiu-jitsu coach that's affecting the world and promoting positive change.
Yep.
You're only doing it to a fraction of your capabilities. Go all in.
Yep. And
again, it comes back to I have extremely high self-confidence in the fact that I know I can do a lot of things. I know I could be successful across an extremely wide array of things in life. Mm-hmm. So it gave me the confidence to go you don't really know how to run a business, but you can learn.
Yep.
You don't know how to, you don't even know what's coming up, but you can solve it.
Yep.
So I jumped in. I went all in at MSA. I bought all the equipment myself. I got the mats.
Yep.
We put it all down, and then we started advertising to the community. And luckily, amazingly, this community kind of embraced me. We got in the newspaper pretty quick. Mm-hmm. We had, I forget which. I think it was just the Livingston Daily, but they came out and they wrote an article about martial arts are changing the lives of the people in this community. And so they gave us a shot, you know what I mean? And, people started coming to us. We started growing. That's where we implemented a kids program for the first time. We had a bunch of fighters competing. That was back in the day where you started to name like Parisian came on board during MSA.
Josh and some of those other
Danny
guys,
Berry.
Diesel,
Danny Berry was just fighting in Fowlerville, beating people up in backyards. Honestly, he was very similar to me, and he came on board. And my first ever student here in Michigan was actually Brian Fornicero because I went into Gladiator. After I had just won a big tournament, I was going in to train with a guy that was teaching there at the time named Rodrigo. I really liked him a lot, and I have a lot of great memories with him. And Brian was like, "Oh man, like what's going on?" Da da da. And I was like, "Oh, I just competed. Let me show you this tournament." And I had actually beat someone in an expert finals with a flying inverted heel hook again. And so I showed him the video, and Brian was like, "That was so sick." And I faced I had just gotten back from the Arnolds. I won it again, and I had faced Johnny Ramirez, who was a black belt under Hoist Gracie at the time. He was actually on the black belt council under Hoist Gracie. And like, I'm just beating people I have absolutely no business beating. Like, I am a million times better now at jiu-jitsu than I was then. I had no business beating the people that I did, but I was finding success. So I beat this Johnny Ramirez. Daniel Alvarez. Remember I said I would remember the guy that I faced at the ADCC tournament when I was a child, second degree black belt, was Daniel Alvarez. Look him up. If not for, and maybe I don't want this to sound disrespectful, but I didn't know how the points worked. I thought I had dominated the match. I passed his guard. I mounted him. I took his back. But I blundered into that opportunity against him. And I realized, like, at the very least, I can hang with this guy.
Yep.
He passed my guard with about 15 seconds and hang on. He didn't even come close to subbing me, right?
Yep.
And then I faced Johnny Ramirez, who was the first black belt going in that I knew about because I didn't know that Daniel was when I went into that match. Yeah. And I was just a 19-year-old kid. I faced Johnny Ramirez. So back in the day, the Arnolds was pretty legit. A lot of good guys would go. Like I met BJ Penn there. I shook Randy Couture's hand. I got to compete with some really good people. So they announced him. They're like, on mat number whatever, Hoist Gracie black belt Johnny Ramirez. And I remember looking over and seeing that was my mat and being like, oh Lord, you know what I mean? Like, so I had beat everybody in the tournament, and then him and I faced in the finals, and man, what a war. He almost subbed me with like 3 or 4 different things. The guy was bad, and I caught him in a darts choke, and I was able to tap him, and I got the win. And so it was like a really big moment. So I was experiencing success. I was winning. I was doing well. And I went into Gladiator to show that video, and Brian was there, and he saw the video and was like, dude, like, can I come and train with you sometime? And I was like, of course, man, like, come over my house. Yep. That's why I'm jumping back to this, because I didn't want to miss the fact that Brian coming over and me training, and like you said, training really.
Right.
But teaching him during the process, because I was way ahead of him, made me realize that, like, I can be a good
He was
coach.
the first guy you wanted to develop.
Yes.
Yes.
And then he said to me, like, can I go try the Michigan Open? I'm like, sure. And he started competing and started winning. Then he was like, can I fight MMA like you? Sure. He started fighting, starts winning. I think he went to like 3-0, like, or 2-0. So all of a sudden I'm like, yo, this thing is working.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But like, I have to give that massive if not for Brian Fornicero, I don't know if SFS would exist.
Wow.
Because man, we were brothers, dude. He was at my house all the time. We wouldn't even just train. We would talk about life.
Yeah.
We'd talk about the future. We would sit down and eat steaks. Like, we would go to 2 broke kids.
Yeah.
Like, I had a little bit of money, but I'd take him to Walmart. I'd always pay for his steaks. We'd get some steaks. I'd go home. I'd grill the steaks for us. We'd sit. We'd talk about what life was going to be, what potential there was, and he believed in me a lot, because I tell you what, a lot of people around me could have easily thought I was delusional. If Brian was sitting here today, he would tell you that back during those days, I was already saying, like, dude, one day there will be a mega facility. We will train people from around the world. UFC fighters will visit our area. We will make an impact.
Yeah.
If you looked at all the evidence around, most people would have been like, you're delusional. You're teaching people out of a basement in Fowlerville. You don't even have a coach. You train on your own. I just didn't have that mindset.
Yeah. It's hard to believe it, because when you're building it, you can't see through to the other side, but everyone agrees. And don't you think, looking back, that those are some of your favorite memories, man? When you're building it, when you're in it, talking about that with the people in the early teams, that's everyone's favorite times is when you're building the business and when you're at those inflection points, man. That's the fun memories.
100%. Yeah. And honestly, thank God I was delusionally confident.
Exactly.
Because if I had focused too much on the likelihood, it comes back to that. I told you very early on in this podcast, I really deeply attached to the idea of it's possible.
Right.
Just like my life could have gotten better, and I might not be suffering forever, it's possible that I will find value again. It was possible for me to create this thing.
Yeah.
So why is that any different? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I had my role models, my inspirations, the Sakurabas and the people. So I just started to try to build it.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm like, I was doing well. So it was reinforcing it. Like, I don't want people, because you can attach to a delusional dream and there's no, you know, your work is not yielding any results. There's disaster everywhere. Sometimes you have to admit when things are failing.
Yeah.
But then again, there are amazing people throughout history that have failed their way to success, that have literally fail, mega successful.
Yeah.
So it's like, you just got to know it.
Yeah.
And I had that internal compass that kept realigning me to, you need to go this direction for the future.
Yeah.
You know, so we opened MSA. I was a disaster. Looking back, if I knew a fraction of what I know now, or if I had a mentor like you in my life, I would have done so much better. I would have got things to get together so much quicker. I wouldn't have made so many mistakes, but they were so valuable, because when you actually make the errors and you burn yourself and you lose money and you do, it is a million times more powerful than someone's words of what you should do.
Yeah. You know, it's funny. I just posted something about this the other day and saw a great post about it, but just that, you know, intuition is not meant to be comforting. It sometimes is what makes you move and makes you uncomfortable. And I think that's for people who are in that and going through that. I mean, you felt it with your whole body, but it was not easy, right? I mean, it was conflict and it was hard, and there was ways out of it, but it was not a comforting, flowing, easy path to that. But you knew you had to do it, man. You know,
100%. And there's something about, if you can tap into the spirit of who you are and what you want, you will go out. You will trample any obstacle to get to what you truly desire.
Right.
If you really want it.
Right.
You know,
Right.
most people say they want something, but they only want it to a certain level of uncomfort.
Yes.
They only want it to a certain level of sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
They really want the thing until it might cost them a relationship or a friendship, or they might, you know, really struggle for a period. Then they don't want it. I wasn't like that.
Yeah.
I was willing to, probably because I had been alone before, I had been empty before, I had been
Right.
broken. I was like, yo, it's okay if I end
Going
up there
through
again.
discomfort and going through work, that was your reality.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's okay if I end up there again, but I know what I want,
Yeah.
and I've got to go for it.
Yeah.
And because if I'm going to live, I should live to make a life that I care
Yes.
about. So, yeah, we started building through MSA. Then comes into the point where I meet you and a lot of people like Vish and countless other people, because we got in with Total Fitness Center.
Mm-hmm.
That actually happened because of Wojo. Wojo, who was training with me, was doing extremely well out of MSA. He was like one of the top amateur prospects, you know, kind of crushing
Yep.
people. I was crushing people. Brian was crushing people. We had a couple people that were kind of running through competition. And with that being said, Wojo had made a connection with Total Fitness Center. The new owners that had purchased it, which was the Spittler family, they really kind of adored him. They brought him in almost like as a third son. And Wojo was always speaking about SFS. He was like, listen, like, you don't understand. There's just something about this place, about the energy, about the people, about James, about the vision. Like, you guys need to meet.
Yep.
So he put me on, like, it almost felt like a blind date between Heather Spittler, the owner. She's was the co-owner of Brighton Ford with her husband Todd, who has passed away since. But and he put us kind of like on a blind. I don't even know if we had met before this, but at Applebee's right here in town. And I met with her, and she was like, Wojo will not shut up about you, about SFS, about the impact you guys are making, tell me about what is going on.
Yeah.
I own a gym in town. I told her about everything. She kind of went all in. She was like, this is incredible. We need more things like this in community. This is inspiring people. This is giving people an opportunity. It is, whether or not they're going to be fighters, it's filling them.
Yeah.
It's making them feel capable, and that yields better results for community, for families, for et cetera. So she was like, I own Total Fitness Center, but I'm thinking about buying out this spot next door, right next to Los Tres Amigos. What do you think about putting SFS there? And it was a no-brainer. I mean, our space was actually about the exact same size, or maybe even a little bit bigger than what we got by Total Fitness Center, but it was tucked away by the Pepsi plant in Howell. No one really goes there. This is Grand River across from Art Van, right by B-Dubs, and like this, and Total Fitness Center back in the day, before it was Total Fitness Center, I think it was Howell Fitness, or
Yeah, I think,
what was it before?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Or was it actually the? Oh no, was it a Powerhouse or an Iron Gym? Because there was one across the street there. It might have even been like one of those type of things.
Yeah, I
Yeah, it
don't
was like
remember what it was.
yeah, something like that. Yeah, like a powerlifting gym too. I think at one point. Or
Yes.
something.
Well, that was
Yeah.
actually
or after. That's right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they basically took over. They had this vision for Total Fitness Center. They wanted to completely revamp it. You know, they brought in SFS next door, and like I said, I have a lot of thanks to them for that. They brought me in next door with the vision of like, we'll have the fitness thing on one side, we'll have the martial arts on the other. There was good and there was bad, and you know, we got extreme exposure to the community at that point. Because now all of a sudden we're on Grand River.
Yeah.
That's where I met you. You would come. Your brother had come in for the first time. You would come in from the first time. Countless people now all of a sudden started to be like, what is this?
Yeah.
And when they got around our energy or our environment or our programs or whatever it was, there was an effect.
Mm-hmm.
Because it started to get us known. Like when you first you're an amazing person to be doing this hosting because you saw us 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That was 9 years ago we took over Total Fitness Center to where we are now. You've seen that journey.
And you just
For
it's
the
so
listeners.
Good. You're a natural community builder too. I just got to say, man, that's something so special about you. Is you're just one of those guys that always having people over, always having barbecues, always do. It's rarer than you think, and it's especially as you get older that people still want to do that and take initiative and always responsible for getting people together and doing all that stuff. You're just a natural community builder too. So I think that's what people found that as well.
That's true.
True.
It wasn't just the martial arts. You know what it was? Man.
The camaraderie, everything. You build so much of that, man. You feel it when you're still in here. That's why I keep coming back. It's not just the training, man. It's the feeling of I'm on a community of pro fighters and the camaraderie, man. It's just nothing like it. It feels like I'm still on a pro sports team. I love it.
That's the magic. Yeah. So, and that comes from the emptiness I had. Yeah. That comes from when I had no one, what life felt like versus when I have a bunch of people around me that I love and I care about. And especially if they're on the come up too.
Right.
I think the reason I put so much pressure on the people around me to be their best is because like that's what we're supposed to be doing. Life can lead you into being a shithead. Yeah. Life has so many pitfalls to get you to go to the bar every weekend and get drunk and fucked up and make bad choices and hurt people and like life has a million pitfalls for you to fall into. All your energy gets consumed by the media or a political struggle or this or that or the other. And I'm like, dude, why don't we put our energy into ourselves and then into each other? And life is like a lot better than what you think. Yeah. And that's something that I have actively worked so hard to create.
Yeah.
And you can tell that it's rare because everybody speaks about that.
Right.
If that was the norm across a wide variety of things, that's the way it is.
Yeah.
Everyone always says like there's a different feel and energy there when things are at their best.
Yeah.
And that is the most attractive part. It's not even the martial arts.
Yeah.
It is the human connection.
Mm-hmm.
So we came next to Total Fitness Center. That got us exposure to the community. And then all of a sudden we started winning more and more and more. And that's where we had our first couple people turn pro. Bobby turned pro. I turned pro. Wojo turned pro. I think Parisian turned pro in that building. I'm pretty sure. But like, now we're going to another level because now we're not just a local amateur martial arts team that's doing okay and building a community. We're starting to win at a successful level, which obviously led to the accolades of like later on Bobby, became the number one amateur girl in the state, which then she turned pro. She got signed to Invicta. She got on the Ultimate Fighter. She fought in the UFC. Josh Parisian, got turned pro, built his way up, got on the Ultimate Fighter, fought in the UFC. We've shown that we can produce success at an extremely high level where I remember I read a statistic at one point that was put out by an MMA journalist that like an extremely small percent of gyms will ever produce out of all the martial arts gym out there that try to produce MMA athletes, an extremely small percent will ever produce a single UFC athlete.
Oh yeah.
And I feel like we've guided, like even though Colin and Cody are no longer with us, Colin was with us from like the very beginning of his career all the way to like get signed to the UFC. Yeah. Cody did like his first martial arts classes, UFC. Yeah. Bobby was a 1-1 amateur when she joined this team, UFC. Josh Parisian, 0-0 amateur, UFC.
There's less people on the UFC roster than there is in the NFL, man.
So think about that. And right here out of our community, it's not just the information, it's the camaraderie, it's the energy, it's the commitment to each other. Even in rockiness, because we've had our ups and downs. We've had times where we have to reevaluate and take a step back and reflect and admit but we have something that can produce success at an extremely high level, and that is very valuable.
Right.
You know what I mean? So we go from Total Fitness Center. We outgrow that space in about 2 years. Then we went to Michelle's Academy of Dance.
First official cage was
Yeah.
here. So, right? Yeah, that's it.
Yep, we went to Michelle's Academy of Dance, and then we got a cage, and we put that in. And again, it was, looking back, I remember thinking, like, this place is huge.
It was a great space, man. Yeah, it was.
We can have the cage in here, and we can have the mats. We have a little, like, kitchen
It
thing.
feels so small now to me. It would probably blow my mind, man.
I bet you if we walked in now, we would
Oh,
probably
my
start
God.
laughing.
Yeah.
But at the time, remember, it had a,
Oh, my God. It feels like this to me still in some ways, walking in and feeling the big mat space. And, that's how it felt.
Because you'd open the door,
Cage
and
in
we
the
actually
back
had a
lab, yep.
check-in area. We had a desk. We had an entrance, like a tiny pro shop. And then we had the mats, which now, I think that place was like 3,000 square feet. Right now, with everything over here, we have 20,000.
Yep.
But I remember, like, that was a massive step for us.
Yep.
And that's where,
It was a real business, man. There's no faking that.
Nope. We started being able
Yep.
I started actually, like, being able to, learn how to be a businessman just in the early days of it. That's where I got offered the fights in Brazil. So I started fighting internationally when we were at that school. That's where Bobby got on The Ultimate Fighter out of that school. Yes, out of that place. So we started to produce some serious. We had the female mega camp where the women from around, Molly McCann, who's a UFC superstar right now, got signed to Barstool Sports. She just had one of the most viral knockouts you'll ever see. She flew from England here for our mega camp. We had a girl come from Ireland, girl come from Finland, all over the country.
That's SFS versus the World was out of that building, wasn't it, too?
Oh, actually, our previous one.
Out of the first one?
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah. So beautiful.
So we started making serious ripples because we started
Yep.
SFS versus the World. Bobby was finding success. I was finding success. And it was enough that internationally we had people. Why is that? Why, if you think back to that, it's almost silly. International studs were coming to our gym next to Michelle's Academy of Dance and being a part of something.
Yep.
That is way bigger than the teaching.
Yeah.
That's like community. That is energy. That is camaraderie.
Yes.
And so many of those people went on to extreme success. And then, just to cap off that part of the story, when we first came here, it was the same thing. It was like when I came here with Brian for the first time, it was only 2 units, and we looked at it, and it was 6,300 square feet was the initial thing we were getting.
Yeah.
And Brian's very like black and white in the way. He was like, dude, don't do it. It's way too much. We'll never need this much space. There's no way we can fill this. Like, you're not going to be able to handle the overhead. And I'm just the exact opposite. I'm like, not only are we going to take this place, but we're going to expand. One day we're going to need more room.
Oh, yeah.
And he's like, at that point in my life, I feel like he's like, all right, I can't doubt you that much because you went from the basement to where we are now. But, like, you're crazy, dude. And between you and I, well, actually, for everyone on this podcast, when I took this building, my exact overhead just to operate was the 100% revenue that I had been bringing in.
So you're planning to operate at break even, hopefully, when you took this building.
Literally. Like, and when I say 100% bring in, it's not from the understanding that I have now. Before I paid my coaches, Chris.
Right, that was all in.
Of the money that came into the entire gym's operation just covered the building's overhead, not the people. So I was underwater substantially when I first started. But I knew that, like, listen, I can't grow there.
Yep.
We have this magnetism in the community. We have all these people winning. We have people getting UFC looking at them. I'm fighting internationally. We got to go bigger level, man.
Yep.
And thank God I was right. I rolled the dice, and when we took on this massive new facility and we renovated it and we made it nice, people kind of flocked to it.
Yeah.
Which is what I had thought would happen. But again, that's kind of living on a prayer.
Yeah, man. But that's also a trend that you see is I don't think I know one person who's not really a self-made successful person that doesn't have that will figure it out. And yes, they earn it to themselves, but they have that inherent. Some people just get caught up on the how and the execution, and they never get past conception, ideas, and vision. And everyone I know who's successful, self-made, like I said, they got that jump, and I'll figure shit out as I go and bring it on, and they make it happen, man.
It's innate.
Because, like you said, no one sane would do this shit. No, it's not. Like you said, you pride yourself on logic. That's where you just got to have a vision and go for it, man. Because logically, you're going into a negative situation and turning down a 6-figure plus career and doing all this, man. It's not always logical, but you felt it, man, with everything you had.
I believed, again, in that it's possible. Yeah. And it is possible. I proved it's possible.
Yeah.
I believed in that truth so much more than the fear of what if this, what if this, what if the... These are all what ifs, and they're not as tangible. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe I will fail. Maybe I don't have what it takes. Maybe all of these things. But the truth that is unquestionable to me is it is possible for you to do it.
Yep.
And that trumped everything.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't care about the other things. I was like, it's possible. Let's find a way to make it happen. I actually want to really briefly go back before, and then I want you to be able to, I want you to dig into any avenue you want to ask me about, because we're almost to modern times now.
Yes.
Where when I was a $7.40 an hour employee as a porter, even then, I remember that I went out of my way to try to bring great energy to work.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell a story because I think so many young people could learn from this. When I worked there, I wasn't making shit. Take $7.40 an hour, take taxes out of that, and the fact that my bosses would never let me get overtime or anything. So I worked like 40 hours a week at $7.40 an hour minus taxes. It was a literal joke, okay? But I didn't look at it that way. I looked at it like, this is the level that I'm at right now, but not where I'm going to be at. So I'm going to do this to the fullest of my capabilities. So when I was a porter at Champion Chevrolet, believe it or not, like, this is going to be funny because I was a fighter and I probably could have put my foot down, but I didn't. My managers and stuff would actually make fun of me because when I would grab somebody's keys for the car, I wouldn't walk to their car back. I would jog every single time. I would be faster because the other porters, they would like, they'd walk out like this, and this was their attitude and their energy. Oh, I needed to go get it. Right? Because they didn't want to be a porter. They didn't want. I would be like, oh, got it. Boom. I would grab the keys, and I would run every single time. Didn't matter. I looked at it two ways. First of all, I'm getting training in. I'm going to get in better shape. And second, what would my bosses rather see?
Yeah.
They want me to see this shithead attitude. I have to go get another car and I stroll out there on my own time. Or do you want me to do something for the customer? How about I run out there and I'll get their car up faster than anybody else, and I'm going to pull up for, here's your keys, have a great day, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Before I even understood business like I understood it now, I knew that it is a representation of myself, the way that I do things.
Yes.
Who gives a shit at what level I'm at as an employee?
Yeah.
I don't care that I'm being paid $7.40 an hour. I care about who I am, so I'm going to do my job to the best of my capabilities.
Yeah.
So what this leads into is one day on a Friday at like 4:45, it's like the Office Space thing where like everyone's just trying to get out of there like, oh my God, hope the boss doesn't ask me to come on the weekend or whatever. The owner of the entire organization is walking through the shop. Now, him and I have maybe conversed for 30 seconds before this, where it's like, hey, how's it going, sir? How are you? You blah, blah, blah. Oh, thanks, you know. He's the owner of all Champion Auto Group. He owns multiple dealerships. He owns commercial real estate. He owns subdivisions. He owns restaurants. This man is a very successful man. So I had a lot of respect and admiration for like, how did he do that? I didn't know his story. So he's coming through the shop, and I watch him walk up to like 10 different people, Chris. Hey, man, I'm trying to open my cabin this weekend. You know, I really need a hand. I need someone to help me like just get things set up. Like, I'll pay you for the weekend. Every single person that Len went to gave him an excuse why they couldn't. Oh, man, I would, but I can't. Back to back. And at this time, I'm vacuuming out I was drying a car, and I was about to vacuum a car down. So I'm listening, and I'm like, okay, this man employs all of these people.
Right.
He gives you the opportunities. Like, I'm not getting paid shit, but like, you guys are getting paid. And every single person told him why they couldn't do it. They couldn't do it. They couldn't do it. They couldn't. And he comes up to me. He walked through the whole shop, and he's like, I could tell he was just disappointed. He wanted someone to like help get his jet skis out, to rake the beach, like whatever, right? And he comes up to me, and he's like, hey man, you know, and he's ultra professional, so he didn't say hey man, but you know, blah blah. Ask me my name. I tell him blah blah. We talk, and he's like, you know, is there any way you could come and help me this weekend on my cabin? Like, I'm just trying to get the thing ready. Like, I'm gonna take my family up there. You know, is there? And I was like, sure, absolutely. Like, I'm thinking like, dude, I'm employed because you have this business. And if I can help you out, why wouldn't I do it? And he said, I'm going to pay you for it. So anyway, and I'm telling this story because I think it is so important about the mindset and who I was that allowed me to open a lot of doors. Because a lot of people might be like, oh, yeah, well, you were making good money, which allowed. Yeah, but I got to that. So I'm a nobody. I'm an employee that couldn't, you know, I'm at the literally lowest.
Well, you should have been based on your story. I mean, you could have just been a minimum wage, you know, working at a gas station, do whatever, and no one would have thought anything of it, man. I mean, that was a comparison for you. There's no question.
100%. Well, and I'm a victim of life, and all these things happen to me, so it is what it is. Maybe I should have got a different shake. So anyway, Len Nadolski is his name because he genuinely changed my life. He brings me up to the cabin. Dude, it was like the easiest work I've ever done. It was like, you know, raking the beach with the crap off the beach, help cleaning out his sheds, bringing out his quads. Like, dude, it was the easiest thing. Like, I was at a beautiful, massive log mansion on the water, having to get it ready for his family to visit.
Yeah.
It was no problem, right? So I do the whole thing. He gives me like $500 cash, which at the time,
Right.
dude, I'm not making any money. He gives me like $500. He's like, "Thank you so much,
It's
man."
like
blah, 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 blah.
2-3 weeks work for you there. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Wow.
but I made an impression on him
Yeah.
because I was the only person that said yes. And when I was up there, I didn't complain. Like he said to
Yep.
do something for like 8 hours, both days, Saturday and Sunday. I grinded.
Yep.
I didn't stop for a second. Oh, you need this done? Let's do it. You
Yep.
got to do this? Let's do it. You got to, etc. So then we come back and maybe 4 months later or 5 months, 6 months. I don't know the exact timelines because it was 20 years ago or no, not 20, 16
Yeah.
years ago. A service advisor position opens up at Champion Chevrolet. Now I know that the one service advisor that I was friends with, his name was Jeff. He's making like $4,000 or $5,000, maybe $3,000 to $5,000 a month.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, I'm making $740 an hour. The position opens up, and I'm like, I got to apply.
Yeah.
You know, and I think I'm 19 at the time. I'm like, I got to apply. So I go to my boss. I'm like, I want to apply to be a service advisor. He like laughs at me. Basically, like, you're a minimum wage employee that cleans gutters and drives cars to our technicians. You are not representing our company, which now I get it. Like at that time, the filter was like, ugh,
Yeah.
you know, you don't see my potential. But like now looking back, it's like, I get it. He doesn't know who I am yet. He only knows his story of me. So I go to his boss. You know, I go right to the next level in the chain of command. His name is John Patrikis. And I'm like, John, I want to apply for this job. Like I'm very capable. I'm great with people. I type in high school 120 words a minute. Like if you watch me type, I
Yep.
type ridiculously fast. The job is people skills, professionalism, customer relations, and computer skills. You have to be able to listen to the complaint of the customer, put it into a manageable format for a technician, and then be basically a liaison between the people and the technician. It's a people skills position, which
Yep.
requires some computer skills.
Yep.
So I'm looking at this like, I can definitely do this. He tells me no. He's like, I love your ambition, but no, you need right? And John was extremely good at his job, but in the old mindset. He's the type of guy that you would not get along with at all because he suppressed people through fear and losing their job and was incredibly condescending. Like he'd be someone that would come around and try to destroy you in any way he could just to make sure your psychology doesn't get to the point where you try to climb up. That's who he was.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm not saying he's that man anymore, but that was the style of management that he did. He
Yeah.
kept people just fearful enough of losing their job and letting their inadequacies be known to the fullest just to make sure that they were easy to control. That was
Yeah.
an old style of management. And you know what? Very effective. It worked for a long period of time, right? You're like, you're terrified to lose your job.
Yep.
You're always trying to perform to the best level.
Yep.
And you don't see your potential of going higher because they're
Right.
constantly showing you every single failure or nuance that they can.
Right.
So this is where the story gets interesting and what you'll appreciate. So Len, I see he wasn't always a champion. He owned 1 million businesses. So every once in a while he's there and it wasn't. I see that he's in. And it's like a couple months after I've worked with him, the position's open. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go up into this man's office and I'm going to tell him he needs to hire me as a service advisor. Like, so
Yep.
that's like that confidence in
Yep.
myself, right? So this dude is worth like $1 billion, Chris. I don't know if you know Len Nadolski, but you should look him up. He's literally a billionaire, if I'm not wrong, or hundreds of millions.
Yep.
So I'm a 19-year-old kid, porter at his shop. I had known him over that weekend. He had seen my value, right?
Yeah.
I walk right up into his office, man. I knock on the door. My heart is beating fast, man. You know, and I go up to him and I go, Len, I want to make you an offer. And he's like, yeah, what's up? He called me Jimmy. What's up, Jimmy? Tell me. And I go, I want to work because I didn't know how to go about this.
Right.
And I was terrified.
Right.
So I created a proposal in my mind. I said, I want to work the job as a service advisor for 1 month for free. I don't want you to pay me. I will come in every day. I will show up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I will be at every meeting. I will learn the system better than everyone else. And if I am not your number one service advisor after a month, don't give me the job. Fire me. I will prove to you that you want me in that position. I forget his exact words, but he looked at me and kind of like, is this kid for real? He was like, I like it. He stood up, walked me down to my boss's office. This was like surreal. And was like, hey, you're going to give this kid a shot as a service advisor.
Wow.
Now you got to think, this is a manager that told me absolutely not, who already tried to break me down in any way he could as a young kid.
Right.
Instead of being like a role model, a leader, someone that tried to inspire me, somebody like John Maxwell. No, he was level 1.
Right.
You know what I mean? John had told me no. Here's the big cheese now, walks down and says, you're giving this kid a shot. So they gave me a shot at Champion Chevrolet. Well, that man, Len, changed my life. Not Champion. Len changed my life. I came in, I worked my ass off, and then quickly, like I had said earlier in the podcast, I started blowing everyone else out of the water in everything. In all my numbers. Just on my typing speed alone, I could handle so many more customers and reports, and nobody could keep up with the efficiency that I did things. You know what I mean? And and in even sales, sales is a very dirty game, and I actually have not a lot of regret, but I feel bad at periods of time where like I felt like I had pushed sales too much. You know, whereas like someone didn't probably need to get their trans flushed on their car. But, like, if there was an opportunity for it, I was going to present it. I was going to say, hey, because it was a system. And the technicians would come to me and say, listen, you know, this car needs brakes on the rear. It needs its, rotors resurfaced. The trans fluid is getting kind of dirty. You should probably flush it, this. Now, listen, I could have, and I would have felt way better in my spirit presented, like, you probably don't need your trans to be flushed. But I would just say, listen, I am being recommended to do this. And I would present it every time to every customer, no matter what. And maybe that's because some of the other guys, after they tried sales for a little bit and they got shut down, no, they lose confidence. And then they don't even ask for it. And then they're just broken people. I just didn't have that. So
you love systems.
So my numbers, they would get like, we called them spiffs, right? Like actually I have some old pictures I'll send you later today because you'll laugh. One service advisor would be at like, like 87 in the month. And another one would be at like 121. I'd be at like 309. Like I would be like, if you put them together and doubled it, it would be just over mine. Which led to, I started making a ton of money. I had a month where I made $9,200 at 23. And it's like, I had no business doing that. You know what I mean? But reason I wanted to tell this story so much was because I forced that door to open. Most people probably have the idea that they want to apply for the position, and then they probably talk themselves out of it. Or they want to, but then the fear cripples them. Or they go to their manager, but then the manager says, no, you can't do this, and then they stop. Maybe the really small percent go to his boss and say, listen, man, I want a shot at this. And then they say no, and then they stop. I was relentless. I was like, no, I will achieve greatness. Like, I am not a $7.40 an hour employee. If you give me an opportunity, I will prove it to you. So I feel like if people could learn from that, like, don't cut yourself down. Don't let other people cut you down. Don't let your life's experiences cut you down. Because there's a James Gray that exists in that story that stopped when he was told no, that never would have had the funds to open up the gym, that never would have been able to open any of these doors because I wouldn't have believed that I was worthy of that. So I feel like that story was super important to tell. But now we're kind of like up to the modern day. We're in this building. So just anything at all from any part of the story that you'd like to ask about, whether it's my career, other people's careers, things I've learned, anything that you can think of, we'll do this for a little bit and then we'll
Beautiful. Well, so I know that you mentioned though when you as a teen, you kind of struggled with school. At some point, you weren't interested in grades, everything. So talk to me about where that, if you always had it, or where that sense of self-accountability came from, because that's what I hear music to my ears is, my gosh, you're just, how much we talk about accountability. You had that for yourself. You just threw out the excuses. You took accountability for what you wanted and where you want to go, and you got the hell after it. So where did that come from when you said you kind of lost it? I know a bit of that was, kind of acting out a bit and proving a point to getting uprooted and moved to Michigan and all that. But is it just who you were and you just found your way back to it through fighting? It's just who you were and you couldn't escape it? Or where was that always inside of you, that accountability?
Yeah, honestly, it was very innate, Chris. When I'm anywhere near my best,
you could just feel it.
It's just who I am.
Yeah.
I am the type of man that if I say I'm going to do something, I have to do it. It will eat at my spirit when I don't.
Yeah.
When I make a commitment, even if it's an internal commitment to myself, and then I don't do it, it eats away at me. It is so, it's like it's a core value.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It deeply resonates to what I want, who I know myself to be.
Yeah.
So it's like I can't get too far off the path, because it's almost like, if I could make this for an analogy for you to understand, if I start to leave the path a little bit, there's a sign that says, hey, the path might be that way.
Yep.
If I leave further, there's a glowing neon sign.
Yep.
If I go further from my path, there's some part of my psychology that will physically grab me and be like, what are you doing?
Yep.
It's just always been that way. And I think, believe it or not, it all comes back down to self-belief, because if you truly believe in your capabilities and you created a future in your mind that you desire, you have a vision, how can you give up on yourself?
Right.
If you have real self-belief, how can you let yourself stray off the course?
Right.
You stray off the course because you don't think you can make it.
Yeah.
Because if you have a path that you deeply desire, that you want more than anything else, and that's genuine, you can't allow yourself to leave it. Because when you start to get off, you go, no, that's my path, bro.
Right.
Whereas most people, maybe they don't know their path.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Maybe they haven't laid out exactly what they want in their lives. So when they get pulled astray, how do you recognize that you're astray if you don't know your path?
Yeah. And if there's, how little I think luck has to do with anything, but if there is anything to be grateful for, it's just the people that, or whatever it is that gives you a mindset that you have that dissatisfaction. There's just only so much you're willing to take, and me too. And I think that's what, if you say, why do people end up where they are? It's like you said, you felt these things. Everyone does. It's just a matter of, do you want to rationalize it and accept it? Or do you want to have accountability, and are you uncomfortable and you're just not willing to accept it? And look, it's just, so if someone is looking at your story and trying to dissect all the things that gave you advantages or whatever, it's just, you felt it and you took action. It really is that simple over and over again. You just weren't willing to accept anything less than what you knew to be your highest expression of service, self-actualization, and realization, all that. You just went the hell after it with everything and just saw it clear and just didn't let that stuff derail you, man. It's just, that's how I see it. It's just vision and action, and vision and action. It's a lot simpler than all this other shit people throw in there, man. But it's just a relentless drive towards seeing that. And it wasn't a linear path, and there were shitty days, just like everything. It was just, you saw that vision, you're not going to be satisfied with anything less, and you're just one of the rare people that feels it, and that just pushes you to action, man.
Your breakdown of it right there is how it feels to me.
Yep.
It's so simple. Like when I see people complicating things, it's not, man.
It's nothing to analyze. You felt that you moved, felt that you moved, felt that you moved. You readjusted, course correct, all that stuff. You just kept going, man.
And maybe it's daunting when you say it that simply, maybe because that's terrifying to people. If it's as simple as, listen, I'm going to tell you as honest as I can have ever spoken in this camera. I feel a deep burning drive towards what I want, and I go towards it. That's it.
And the reason you believe it, like I tell people, you earn this belief to yourself because, look, your vision starts kind of small. I know we all have these incredible vision points, like you mentioned, that are huge, massive visions, but it starts small because you were in a basement still. You can even see this. So you earn that, and they start to feed each other, where it's like you believe it, you get re-encouragement from your results and external results. Then you believe bigger, then you get reinforcement, and they fuel each other because the belief and your actions are starting to fuel each other and come together. It's just, that's why it's hard for people to say, even my sister, she's like, you have all these talents, and I feel like I'm not. It's like, no, it's just leapfrogging all those little bits of action and new points to come from, man. It's just, I know it's people want to analyze it, process the hell out of it, but it really is just get moving, and you kept going, and that's why you're here, man.
You said something to me on our podcast. I don't know if you remember this. You said it's just jumping from lily pads.
Yeah.
And as a person that focuses so much on truth, when I see results being gained and I see people winning and I see progress being made, it just reinforces this belief. But I am like when you cited the basement thing, even in the basement, I knew this was coming.
Yep.
I've always been delusionally confident, where what I do is I create like this incredible vision.
Yep.
And I'm just relentless towards the vision.
Right.
Because if you create a vision that you desire so much, like what do you want your future to look like?
Yep.
You have to envision that to the fullest of your capabilities. You have to feel that experience. You have to know what your life would look like, what it feel like, what your friendships, what your impact on your community. You have to create this vision so clearly that every day when you get up in the morning, you are going to be pulled. It's almost like that future is going to throw back a rope and it is going to attach to you. And every day it's going to pull on you a little bit. And when you try to get away from that direction, that rope is going to say, hey, feel this tension, feel this tightening. It's because you're not going the direction that you actually desire. And the number one thing, if I could tell people what has helped me, and I've said this multiple times, but people I know that are going to listen to this, I want them to take the value in this. It's possible. Wherever you are compared to where you want to be is possible. If you can just accept that basic truth, that diminishes the fears so much. That allows you to stand in defiance of the odds. That allows you to silence the voices of critics or people trying to crush you because it is possible.
Yep.
So it doesn't matter if there's a million people against me in what I believe to be my future. If I believe it is possible and I pursue it, my actions are what will create it.
Yep.
So I keep it that simple, man.
Yep.
You know, and like I had a float tank experience about maybe 5 years ago. You've done a sensory deprivation tank, right? I had a float tank experience where I have a pretty quiet mind. When I'm not thinking, my mind is very quiet.
Yep.
And that happened over the course of life, right? Like, and I think it's with my relationship with truth. I'm not constantly asking questions.
Right.
I'm pretty grounded in who I am and what I believe. So my mind is able to be very silent when I need it to. So I went into the float tank like, well, my mind doesn't like chatter a lot when I'm intentional. So like, where am I going to go? Like, am I just going to lay here in dead silence for 90 minutes or 60 minutes or whatever? Like, what is going to happen? So I decided to go into this float tank just as an observer.
Yep.
Like, I'm not going to judge a single thought I have.
Right.
I'm just going to observe. I'm going to just be a floating bit of consciousness in the universe and see what comes up. And somehow I got on this journey of my inner thoughts. Like, why am I who I am? Mm-hmm. Like, what makes me me? You know what I mean? Like, just, I don't know how I got on that chain of thought, but it led me to this one sentence that really impacted me profoundly and opened more doors in my life and made me a better man and made me achieve my potential even more, where the base thought was, all that I am is what I believe myself to be. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is, if I went to a random person right now and said, like, are you a good public speaker? They're going to answer me based on their experiences. Let's say they have a fear of it or they failed one time. They're going to say no. That label is now attached to them for the rest of their life unless they try to peel that label off. And if you realize you are a malleable consciousness, that if you actively, what if your response was, I'm not now, but I have the capability of being an amazing public speaker?
Yep.
You would be changing the internal conversation. You would be changing the dialogue to yourself, because it's possible that you could be the best ever. Jim Carrey is someone I've read a lot about, where he was booed off stage repeatedly, told he was a failure, goes on to be a comedic icon because his story internally was, I can do this. Even if I'm not seeing any fruits of my labor right now, even if I'm failing right now, I have the capacity to be an incredible comedian. So what I started to realize was, that one sentence, Chris, allowed me to dig back into my mind even deeper. And anything that I had labeled myself to be, I had made mistakes or this, that, and the other thing, I was like, if I am not that, I am the product that has learned from every one of these experiences. And by being that, I can turn any bad experience into gold, into lessons, into progress as a man, progress as a father figure, mentor, coach, etc. So now my mind is one of, I feel there are no limits to what I can achieve. So it's more about, what do I want? Who do I desire to be? And that's where you're now guided more by like your moral compass or your core values or your heart. But if you can live through that spirit, knowing there are really no limitations between you and any greatness you want to experience. There aren't. There are the stories you tell yourself, and there's little bullshit that, or obstacles or difficulties or problems. Of course they're going to be there. But they have no relevance to whether you can make it to your greatness or not. So as my mind has grown and that self-belief was always there, and the intentional, restructuring of difficult things, life has just yielded a lot of success. And I think maybe one of the reasons I've been successful as a coach is because I can always see potential within myself. No matter what situation, no matter how low, it's possible rings in my mind. Guess what? That means I see that same potential in every other human being I encounter. what state I meet you in is totally irrelevant. If I meet you as a court kid that comes from a totally broken family, that has struggled your entire life, that thinks you have no, potential in this life, I don't see that.
Yeah.
I see exactly what you are with the extreme ability to grow sitting right at your fingertips. If you would just take, charge of that life, reframe those things and say, man, it's time to make this story an incredible one.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely, man. Something I think I just realized during this podcast, and probably felt this about you, this is why we're so connected too, but, most entrepreneurs are pretty, especially me, man, I am hyper emotional. I take my work home with me. I'm just emotional. There's no way I can separate personal and business. I'm all in emotionally. I am very fired by the prove you wrong from an emotional standpoint, but it's funny that you've had all these prove you wrong doubting moments, but it hasn't been that emotional fire. It's been the logic. It's just, I think that's why I latch onto you so much, because there's so much to learn, so much perspective that I love seeing from that side of it. Because everyone I know, and my dad, we're just emotional and intense, and man, that's business to me. Is entrepreneurship is all emotion. So it's just so interesting to find someone that's gone through kind of like a fuck you, prove you hero's journey, and just is where you are with it and able to speak where you are with it, man. It really is so refreshing and unique and just so special to you.
There is one bit of magic in it that I have never taken for granted, and it's even when I feel broken or down or depressed or useless or whatever point of my life that I was feeling, I'm still able to continue pursuing what I want, because it's not like I'm not shocked by those emotions. I don't need to feel the certain way. I'm doing it because of my belief in the truth and potential, not because of the way I feel. So that's an amazing yin and yang that we have.
Totally, man.
Because you probably execute best when you're like got that momentum rolling.
Right. That's why you make me want to fight professionally, because I'm like, I just want to go to war with you, man. You're just one of those guys. I said that a million times where it's just like you breathe that out of me. It's like I need that like 1-2 punch. I just I really admire being around those type of people, but it's rare to find them who, like you said, that didn't stop you. And logically, you shouldn't have done half the shit you did. You shouldn't have done all the shit you did, logically. I mean, getting in a cage, jumping from a stable career to open your own business and have risk. Nothing you've done has been logical on that sense. So I think that's why we share the same kind of guiding compass on that shit. It's just a different kind of perspective, neutral base that we have. And what a journey, man.
100%. Yeah. And it has allowed me to, like, I don't want to go into the 2020 thing at all, but it's allowed me during incredible emotional times to keep an extremely level head and be able to just be analytical. In this life, when emotions are manipulated so badly, people are ripped all around by their emotions. I am able to stay in a very clear, like, what is the truth of this thing? And then build a platform from there. And that is a tool that has been so important to my growth as a person, to my community, to things like that. Because I'm not like manipulated around. And to be honest, growing up, especially in my older 20s, I was getting a little bit nervous because I can detach emotionally so much to the point where my decision is purely based on black and white, the evidence, that I'm like, is that what a healthy human being should do? I had to go through that journey. Like, wait, shouldn't our emotions be like deeply intertwined to our decision making? But now I've just accepted it's just how I am. It's like I love very deeply. I feel tons of emotions. I get all these things, but I just have this capacity for detaching due to events of my life that's really important.
Yes. So, and kind of to bring it full circle, man, I had to hold myself back from wanting to jump to this when we were talking about it. But, after the story with your mom, another thing that I admire about you is, I see you with Braden, I see you with Stacy, and, just love and family. I mean, just the things you wouldn't expect the story to end this way. So just talk to me about what you found with Stacy and what that meant to you to find a mom and doing all that, just how it came to find love and family and stability and all those things in full circle. And you know what I'm getting at, man.
So that's a huge thing, because the journey of an entrepreneur, the journey of someone that's passionately chasing a dream in life over other things, tends to really make you an outlier. And if you're an outlier on the bell curve of relationships and the way you're living life, a lot of the times you can't connect with people. What I want to talk about is not what they want to talk about. What I'm trying to do, the way I'm trying to dive.
It's a very rare life. You see how rare it is as we keep going, man. It's just rare and rare to find people who are 100%. Living it, staying with it, and don't drop off at one of the million points you mentioned.
100%. So I found myself in many relationships where I was being who I am. I was giving 1,000% of myself to someone else to try to bring out their greatness. but I wasn't really being given that much in return, other than like, yeah, some love and appreciation during the process. But as soon as my giving wasn't, not even that, like once they didn't need me to be the healer, the guide, or the mentor, the giver, well, then their appreciation and value in me dropped substantially. Because if I am going all in on someone and they're at a broken stage in their life where they're really trying to find themselves, they're trying to build greatness, they're trying to achieve something that they're proud of, then of course they have extreme value for me if I'm helping in that process. But let's say they become self-actuated, they start accomplishing all their goals, they start being a winner, they start getting all the attention, they start being a superstar. Well, then all of a sudden it's like, well, you're just James. I don't need you anymore. I am confident. I have potential. I am great. And that's an interesting dynamic because, like people can quickly lose value in you, which I think could make you into a jaded person. And I have one sentence that I told you at the coffee shop that I want to be on this podcast is I have to oftentimes in my life when I'm in difficult situations or situations of conflict, ask myself, do I do what I do because of the result I get? Or do I do what I do because it's who I am?
Right.
And that statement always grounds me in. So with Stacy, it's a really interesting dynamic because I had never dated a woman with children before, ever.
And you didn't see yourself wanting a family, kids, anything, right?
Honestly, through my 20s, actually through my after the Michelle damage, I had never wanted to get married and I had never wanted kids. And I love kids. I love working with kids. I love how kids are so enthusiastic about life. They're little balls of energy that just need direction and guidance. And they can conquer anything if because they don't even have to believe in themselves. They believe in your belief in them. And if they believe in that, it can yield such greatness because they're like, you know what? If he thinks I can do it, maybe I can do it. It gives them. So I've always loved kids, but like I swore in multiple relationships that I would never get married. I was not going to have children. And I'll tell you where that comes from. It comes from a fear. And what it is my dream and my drive and my passion is my number one thing in life. Number one. It is like I am on this mission to try to make a life worthwhile, which I don't even know why. It's just my spirit. We're all going to die. We're all going to the same place. But for some reason, this mission means more than anything to me. The problem with that is, in society, you are taught that, well, your relationship or your girlfriend, that should be number one. And then this should be number two. And then family should be this. And I'll tell you right now, and it's going to sound very selfish, is like my dream, vision, all the thing went above my family, went above my relationships, went above my joys or other things I wanted to do. I am on a mission. And what that does is it puts the other things in secondary placements, right? And that's extremely hard for people. That is extremely difficult to people. And you know what? And I understand. Like a woman, if I'm dating a woman, she wants to know that I'm her world, that she's my world, that she is the single most important thing to me in existence. Well, here's the unfortunate truth, and hopefully this doesn't get me into I have to speak the truth. Is like once Michelle had killed herself, and because I did make her number one. She was my number one thing. I sacrificed.
You're all in.
It was, I will make this woman happy, and together we will have a life of meaning. You know what I'm saying? And when that was ripped from me, what I realized, just like when my mother's story was shattered and all these things, is things can change. And now she had committed suicide, but relationships can end, damage can happen. All of those things can go away. But my drive and dream and action in the future can always be there because it comes from within. So that became who I was. So it put me into a lot of relationships where, to be honest, and like I said, I'm not blaming anyone I've ever dated if they listen to this podcast and they think like, oh, he's just shitting on us. I am not in any way saying that. I am definitely saying that my visions and dreams and everything were my number one priority, and my relationship would have been my number two. But now I think anyone that's ever dated me would also say that I gave everything I could at the current level of man that I was to be the best for them, to bring out greatness in them, to make them want to, you know what I want to do? Make them find their own journey, man. But you know what that does? Sometimes when you make someone find their own journey, their journey goes a different direction than you.
Yeah.
But I'm okay with that. Most of our society is not. It's
Right.
like, no, like, I love you because you're with me. I don't love you if you would leave me.
Yeah.
You notice that in
Yeah.
society, right?
Yeah.
I'm wired different.
Yeah.
Even if I'm deeply in love with someone, but I see they have a passion, they have a journey, they have a mission, they have something that
Yeah.
is bringing them out of bed every morning that they're chasing, and that mission pulls them off from being parallel with me, and we end up splitting up. I'm not resentful for that. That's a truth. I can accept that.
Yeah.
There's not like this. Oh, well, now I have to hate you, which is what you see everywhere. You see this conditional love that's like, yeah, I love you as a human being as long as you are providing for me what I want you to provide for me. And if you're not, then I don't love you anymore.
Yeah.
In my mind, that's just not love, man. So with Stacy, it's the first time I ever dated a woman with a child. And I remember at first, we had actually just kind of like hooked up, and she would admit like I liked her, she liked me.
Yeah.
It led into a date, and we
Yeah.
just kind of hooked up. But I was in a mess situation. Bobby and I had just split up only a couple weeks before.
Right. You were with her a long time too.
And
man.
yeah, 5 years. And before that, I was with a girl for 5 years. And before that, I was with a girl for 4 years. I'm the type of man that like, it's like just like a dream. When I
Right.
invest in something, dude, I'm going to invest in it until it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I'm going to go all in on it. You know what I mean? So like if you took out my main relationships, I have been single for probably less than a year and a half of my entire adult life.
Yep.
In my entire life. You know what I mean? And so with Stacy, I remember being so nervous about that because I was like, listen, all of society tells me like this child and her are going to have to be this number one. They're going to have to do this. Your dream might have to go on the back burner. And like that created a lot of fears. And when
Right.
we were first getting together, I wasn't the man that I had the potential of being to her. I almost didn't even want to fully commit to that relationship because it scared me.
Yeah.
It made me like what if I'm not the father
Right.
figure that this little boy needs, or the mentor that he should have, or what if I
Yeah.
and those fears can lead you to being someone you're not.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so what I witnessed over time from Stacy that I had never really felt truly before, not that I wasn't supported before, because I was, and I had good relationships in the past. Stacy wanted me to be my best for my dream, for my vision, for my team, for my life. And she just wanted to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And she actually kept Braden from me for multiple months. She didn't even introduce me to Braden because she didn't want to just throw this little boy into the mix and make things difficult for him, for me, for her.
Right.
She wanted me to be me.
Mm-hmm.
And I had honest to God, I had never really experienced that.
Yeah.
I had experienced people who needed healing and love and guidance and mentorship
Yeah.
that loved me, that I loved, and we had a thing together. I had never had someone that was like, I love you for you.
And your vision, man. Yep. Yep.
And maybe we can have a thing together.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it actually came on very organic and very natural, and it felt more right than most relationships I've had as an adult.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, is this what support is supposed to feel like? Like she's genuinely trying to support me being me to the fullest. And Braden has been, man, I value that kid. So he has a heart of gold. I'm sure he won't listen to this podcast, so I'm going to say a couple things, but he is like such an amazingly good kid, but like very sheltered and very like very naive, because he just doesn't realize how tough the world can be.
Yeah.
And his mother has poured love and support and, all of these wonderful things onto him. And I am very terrified about how ruthless life can be.
Yeah.
Because like for as much as I've experienced good life, and because I've been very blessed, I know how horrible life can be. I know how damaging and painful life can be. And I see this little boy that is just like when you're around him, he sees your car, he's hyped. He's hyped up for 3 weeks, Chris.
Yep.
He's like, dude, Chris's Lambo. Like, he's just such a,
Yeah.
it's this spirit.
So
that just,
pure and innocent, man. And
it's
just
what it is.
Yeah.
He just radiates this energy for life and everything. And I'm terrified of what that's going to yield, because life is going to try to destroy that.
Trying to balancing, preserving that beautiful, rare quality, and also how do you be there to help him cushion some of these blows without dampening that? And man, it's all so tough.
And I'm not his father. So there's clear lines that I don't want to step over, because I try to think about,
Right.
you know, if I had a son and there was another man in the picture, like, that would be a difficult relationship, because I would have such high expectations and standards on that man.
Right.
You know what I mean? And maybe even unfair ones. But I'd be like, listen, if you're in my child's life, period, these are non-negotiables.
Yeah.
You know, so I try to be the absolute best mentor I can be for him. And it seems to work really well for our family unit. Like, I can tell he loves me very dearly, and I have a lot of love for him. But it's like, it's a delicate thing.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
And he's about to hit it. He turns 13 this weekend.
Wow.
So he's about to hit his teenage
He
years.
was younger, man. Wow, that came quick. Yeah.
He's about to be 13. So I know that life, when puberty hits, when relationships come, when the hierarchy is extremely important to children in schools, it is a rough period. So I'm kind of terrified for the little man coming forward. But as a family, like, I am incredibly blessed. And like, you know, it gives me hope, because in my 20s, when Bobby and I split up for a very short period of time, I had almost just accepted that, like, just be single for the rest of your life. Chase
Throw
your
yourself
dream to the
into work,
fullest.
and that'll be that.
Chase your dream to your fullest. Love on all the people you can in your life. You know, show people their potential. Create something lasting. Make a difference. Be an incredible version of a human being that hopefully makes an impact on this world. But, like, the relationship side is just not there for you. It's just not in the cards for you, and that's fine. And I had been this close to flipping that switch. Like, I don't know if Stacy knows that. Like, I was so close to just being like, click, and then it's like, hey, like, I'll be the best I can, but I'm not interested in that. You know what I mean? And Stacy has kind of saved me from that. And to tell you, because I know you've gone through a lot of these same struggles, she's balanced me a lot. She has saved me from being too all in to a degree that's probably unhealthy for my mind.
Yeah, it's wonderful to see you guys together, man. Oh my
She's
gosh.
forced balance. She even put her foot down with me a couple times and said, listen, you're going to pick a day or two of the week that you do put at least our family first, and you put our energy first, and you tone it down a little bit, because we need it. And then the other days you can be you. And I pushed back super hard at first, but then after I made the transition, it's actually better for my mental health.
I love that, man.
It's better for my impact. It's better for all the things I do.
There's no question.
So she, you know, we're going to get married. We haven't set the date or anything yet, but she has a ring on her hand. I you know, at your restaurant, you were a part of the surprise. For the people that don't know, Chris helped me surprise Stacy's engagement. And, you know, like, and I hope to live with her for the rest of my life. And I hope that Braden grows up in a world where he can look and say, you know, I'm very thankful and appreciative that James was a father figure to me growing up. You know what I mean? So it gives me, if you're an entrepreneur, you're one of those people chasing a passion, you feel like you haven't found, it's possible.
Oh, yeah.
Just use those. Anyone that listens to this podcast, I want you to remember the words, it's possible. When you're in your biggest broken states, when you feel like you can't get through something, when you get to your lowest points, remember that it is possible that you can turn your life around. And if you remember those words, and you always know that it is possible that I can change the trajectory of this thing and be on my feet again and be smiling again and happy again and stronger than ever. Because my strength comes from all the pain.
That's right. That's right.
My strength is not because I was intelligent. My strength is not because I had a loving aunt. My strength is from the pain. My strength is from the darkness. My strength is from all the times that I thought I might take my own life. So, like, when you get to those points and you feel like, this is it, I'm done, man. I can't. Maybe that will be the greatest source of strength for the rest of your life, if you remember that it's possible that life can be better.
That's right, man. Well, James, I just have I can't say it enough, man, just a massive admiration and respect for your story and who you are, man. And just, like I said, I hope this highlights, you know, I feel like success is either romanticized or it's totally disqualified, and there's nothing in between. But this is just a story of, you know, as I'm hitting 30 now, it's so much of what you describe, man. It's just, it's not easy. There's stops and goes. That the only consistent thing is that we have this belief, and we just are dissatisfied with anything or less, and we just keep going and we figure stuff out, and we just take these adjustments, man, and roll with it. And man, but it's just movement and the grind, and you just had this internal drive, and it's no surprise that you are where you are and have what you have, man. Knowing you as long as I have, and Austin and some of the people in my life, it's just no surprise that you are where you are. I mean, we've been having these talks for, long. I remember so distinctly too the talk about, MIA and all that. It's just what a journey it's been, man. And I can point to you for so many examples of overcoming, living, executing, just embodying so many of the things that I value, man. And I grew up with this stuff, so I had the faith for it. You just, choose to kind of adopt this faith for logic and trust and truth, and look at the results of it, man. So it's just so impressive, and just such an influential journey for me, man, because I had such a different way to it, and we believe so much alike, but it's just, I just admire and respect the hell out of your journey, man. It's so impressive to me.
I actually love that this podcast wasn't even really the story of anything that because I didn't have any expectations when I sat down for this podcast, and that's what I wanted. It wasn't even really the story about like the big wins or the fights or da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
This was more of the journey of my story
the
to
story,
this point.
Man, that's it.
And like that is where the magic lies, guys.
It is.
Like everything that has ever taken place in my life is a result of the internal world and my self-belief and those things. You know what I mean? So I feel like we've really captured today a glimpse into my psychology, or into the like why I am who I am.
Yeah.
And like I said, for all the pain, I am so blessed and so thankful, because like the universe has given me a life where when I sit here today, I'm appreciative for everything that I've gone through. If I had a time machine, I would go back and I would make certain things different, right? But I can sit from a place and say, I am thankful for the things that I have gone through, because I would not be the man that I am today, nor could I make the impact that I could had I not. And that is a good feeling, because I can tell you what, as a young broken kid, I never thought I would get to that point.
Mm-hmm.
I never thought I would get to the point where I would actually say, like, I'm thankful for the pain that I've endured. So Chris, I couldn't have found a better host out there. We recorded 3 hours, and hopefully people will pull some magic from the story. I feel like at some points we bounced around a little bit, but I love the fact that it wasn't really about just like, hey, here's our wins. Because I didn't want it to be that. I'm not ever looking for, hey, here's our credentials. This is what we've done. This is where our gym rocks. I don't want that.
This is the real messy reality, man. This is exactly, this is not
stuff.
the elevator speech. This is the reality. Like you said, you mentioned 3, 4, 5 times you wanted to stop, could have stopped. I mean, it was not as easy as people think. You didn't just believe it and have every easy day, man. It's just, that journey is what I love, that messy struggle, because it's so obvious looking back. Like I said, at the time, it feels random or whatever going through it, but it's just so obvious knowing you, looking at what you've created, the lives you've impacted. It's so obvious, man.
So final thing on the podcast before we wrap this up, guys, just believe. Do the work inside. You got to take action. You have to have accountability, but you have to believe that things can be better. And when I say just believe, I mean like believe that life can reward you becoming the person you're supposed to be. Because that can get you to drive action. If you don't believe that life will reward you for being a better person, it's kind of hard to get started. But if you believe that it can be better, and don't let people take you off the course. I'm not going to say who the girl was, but I'm going to wrap it up with this. I had one woman who I dated for almost 5 years who looked me dead in the face and said, you need to choose between jiu-jitsu or me. You need to just get a regular job, and we need to have our family, and you need to choose between me or her. And it was, as bad as this sounds, for almost 5 years of dating, it was the easiest decision of my life. Because I was like, I can't sacrifice everything that I am and what I believe in and what my destiny for just someone else to be happy. Because you know what I will do? I will sacrifice all of my happiness. And you know what? If I do that, 5 years into that, 10 years into that, I'm going to be this shell of a human being who let his flame go out, and I'm going to make that person unhappy. And they're going to say, you weren't the person that you are when you're not the person that you are when I met you. And it's like, yeah, because you killed my flame. You know what I mean? So I want to tell people, if you listen to this podcast and my words have any value, believe in yourself, chase what you want and who you want to become to the fullest, and allow the universe to take you on a ride. There might be pain, there might be struggle, there might be incredible heartache and loss, but you have to go on the ride. And when you do, you'll look back and be proud of your story. And that right there is the magic, man. That's what makes this life worthwhile. I sit here today considering myself like one of the most blessed people I know, and yet I have more pain than most people.
And
right?
James, I just got to say, though, you are an embodiment of you really can, all you can do is work on yourself, man. And I don't know if I have a better example of my life of someone who's built a community around working on himself and just not accepting anything less. Look at, you just said, let me just solve this problem, have some accountability for my life, who I want to be, how I want to feel, where I want to go, and look at what's happened because of it, man. So I think you are just one of the purest embodiments of that I've ever seen. You're changing the world by just getting yourself right, relentlessly looking at how do I try to be the best man I can be, and look at what it's doing, man. Changing lives every freaking day. So
all right, 3 hours. I'm going to drop a quote, and I'm clicking the off button, or Chris and I will talk all day. The final quote, it's on the top of my Facebook. If you go to my Facebook, it says, the greatest gift you have to give is that of your own personal transformation. That is what I believe. That is what I wish for other people. And you know what? If you have a tough family, be the change.
Yep.
If you have a tough relationship, be the change. If you have a tough anything, if you are the change, you will change the world around you. When the internal changes, the external starts to change as well. So, Chris, man, it was truly an honor, as always.
What a journey.
There's no one else I would have rather sat and podcast with today. And, I hope this drops, I hope this is valuable to a lot of people. So we will wrap this up.
Beautiful.